May meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Thank you for your time today. Our agenda includes the review of the 2026-2027 budgets and related four-year financial plans of the City of Buffalo, the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, and the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority. The Buffalo City School District recently submitted the proposed budget on May 4th, the review of which will be at our next meeting. A complete financial plan has not been submitted at this time. The district has submitted a structural deficit plan, which is on the agenda today. We will begin today's meeting with a roll call of directors. Jeanette?
Secretary Foss.
Here.
Director Sanfilippo.
Here.
Director Hobbs.
Here.
Director Keenan.
Here.
Mayor Ryan.
Proxy here.
And County Executive Fulenkars.
Here. Good.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item of business is to approve the minutes from the board meeting held on March 9th, 2026. The directors will find a draft of the minutes and accompanying resolution in their board book under tab 1. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Any corrections or changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Our first item of business will be district matters. At our March meeting, the board required the district's financial plan modification to address the decision to pause the closure of 2 schools which were anticipated to be closed at the beginning of the 2026-2027 school year. A plan was submitted on April 14th and is included under tab 2 of your board book. Financial analyst Miller has prepared a brief summary of the document for us. After his review, we will have an opportunity to address the superintendent and the CFO who are here today. I will ask that any questions be held to after the presentation. Nathan?
Thank you. Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to get this full screen so it looks a little nicer. There we go. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. The following is BFSA's analysis of the Buffalo City School District's summary plan to reduce structural deficits beginning in 2027-28. I'll give you some background information. The district submitted its 26-29 financial plan to BFSA back on July 17th, 2025. There were structural deficits in all 4 years of the plan, beginning with the current year at $78.8 million, reducing in 26-27 to $31.8 million, and deficits in the next 2 years, totaling a cumulative $158 million over the 4 years. It's a significant reduction from year 1 to year 2. Okay. The plan included a cost reduction plan, which included a focus on aligning total staffing in a number of open buildings with a decline in public enrollment. This included closing 2 public schools in 26-27. Essentially, over the last 5-10 years, student enrollment has dropped. Inversely, FTEs has increased, and the idea behind this was to realign, to get it back into a proper ratio. Fund balance was totaled at its height, $424.1 million, back on the end of fiscal year end 2024, would be significantly reduced to a projected $216.7 million by the end of fiscal year end 29. This assumed that the school closures would occur back in the following year, 26-27. In January 2026, the superintendent determined that the school closures would be deferred, but would occur in 27-28 instead. And then back on March 9th, this board reviewed the Q2 2026 analysis and required the district to submit a modified 2026-29 financial plan. The plan would clearly delineate the financial impact of deferring the closures by 1 year. And then that plan, the deficit reduction plan, was received back on April 14th of 2026. Following the introduction, we have some key findings that we want to point out here. Yes, the district has a structural deficit as general fund expenditures exceed revenues. The out-year deficits will widen without district action, as revenues grow at a lower rate than expected expenditures without action. In order to address these structural deficits, the need to address them is very dire. Total fund balance is projected to decrease by $187.2 million by June 30th, 2028, without deficit reduction actions. And then this is the district determination, is that there's a minimum of $200 million in total fund balance, which they term the fund balance floor, to ensure fiscal and operational solvency and provide adequate resources to cover all current assignments, including transfers to the central commissary. This is a table that shows a summary of what the district submitted for their deficit reduction plan. At the top, we have personnel reductions of almost 250 personnel. This is from closing the 2 schools, or rather, excuse me, closing 4 schools. We should point that out, that it is changed from 2 schools to 4 schools. And the personnel savings from this action would be estimated at $27.8 million annually, or 28.8 altogether, including non-personnel savings. The approach that the district took was that that's a theoretical high, and that you may need to transfer resources and personnel into existing schools. So conservatively, they say, by closing 4 schools, there'll be a run rate of at least $23 million annually from these actions. Additionally, there'll be transportation savings of $2 million annually. There'll be operational efficiencies from that as well that are not dollar quantified, but will help them with reducing bus runs and making sure that there's adequate number of aides on the buses and there's drivers available. They also estimated a charter school tuition reduction of $5 million annually. The formula is based on general fund operational expenses from prior years. I'll get to that in a moment, but that's where that estimate comes from. And when you add those all together, it's $30 million annually in estimated deficit reductions. To be identified additional reductions, this will be in the forthcoming financial plan, is not included within this deficit reduction plan, was an additional $15 million annually of deficit reduction. So we point that out here, but because they weren't identified within this document, they're forthcoming, we just point out that it's something that they're in their eye on and are working on. The total would be $45 million total. Closure of the 4 schools results in a reduction of personnel by a net 198 positions. It's approximately just under 1,200 students that would be transferred from yet to be identified schools. There was an example used, but it's not, the determination of what schools are closing has not been made, so we're using averages and estimates to figure out what the impact would be. The positions that would be transferred back to the existing schools have not been identified, but it's essentially a $5.5 or $5.8 million contingency if to cover the 20% that are moving back. The net savings from this action of closures is a minimum of $23 million, and the positions are outlined at the bottom there. Majority of them are teachers, and 151. Also includes a number of administrators, white collar, security guards, teacher aides, teaching assistants, and engineers. We did talk about transportation savings. I believe it's fairly stated in the first year, but we point out that it's probably overstated in the years thereafter because district receives reimbursement aid on prior year expenses, and so for every dollar they spend in year 1, year 2, they get 87 cents back. So I point that out, that the run rate would be overestimated for that. We didn't come to a conclusion on charter school tuition savings in year 1. The way that the formula is based on prior year, 3 prior year changes in operating expenses. So we thought that the $5 million was probably overestimated just in 27-28. And then of course that the $15 million annual deficit reduction actions were not defined, they're loaded. So going back to what this board had asked for, was basically what's the impact of deferring the closing 2 schools? The opportunity cost, not closing 2 schools in 26-27 is quantified at about $12 million. But because the new plan shows closing 4, not 2, beginning in 27-28, the net 4-year deficit is reduced. The initial cumulative 4-year deficit was 158, it's now down to 127.2. You can see that in year 27-28, it's significantly lower than what had originally been included. Oops, I'm ahead here. This next slide shows historical and projected fund balance. Once you hit 26-27, it breaks apart to be what fund balance would be projected to be if they decided not to close schools at all, if something happened and they didn't do it. The red line shows projected fund balance, total fund balance with the school closures. And then finally, the gray line shows total fund balance projected with the school closures, as well as the additional $15 million in to be determined actions. Then the yellow line going across is the $200 million fund balance floor that the district identified. You can see at the very end in 28-29, the only projected fund balance that would be above that 200 million would be with all the actions at 207.2. The next slide is very similar. It's not total fund balance, it's assigned and unassigned. So we're showing the same thing, but we're removing the non-spendable from the restricted. And real quickly, I'll go through the conclusions here. We can summarize these. The fund balance projections demonstrates the need to close the 4 schools while requiring other deficit reduction actions. We went over the projections for where fund balance would be. The deficit reduction plan demonstrates the importance of district officials to close 4 schools in 27-28 at the beginning of the school year and not to postpone the closures. That concludes my brief summary.
Questions? Somebody want to start? Go ahead.
Sure. The charts are helpful to show how the fund balance decreases. What I'm not clear on is which parts of these fund balance can be used to balance future budgets. In other words, the full amount. Some is set aside for certain purposes, but like the current budget that had $78 million at one point to balance the budget.
Right.
Is this second chart on page 11 that leaves somewhere between 79.7 and 169.7 available to balance future budgets?
Right now, at the end of last year, there was about 187 million available to balance the budgets. We're projected to exceed our approved budgets again, based upon the third quarter report. So we'll end this year with $126 million available to balance our budgets.
126?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, the unassigned, okay.
And the superintendent and I had numerous conversations about next year's proposed budgets, which we submitted to you. With the $66 million deficit, we'll still have $60 million at the end of next year to balance.
At the end of 27, 28.
Yes, 60 million. And that does not include, our assignments right now are 200 million, and like most everything else in our financial operations, they're very conservatively constructed. We have $70 million in those assignments for OPEB liabilities, along with all of the mandatory things such as carryover encumbrances, the subsequent year's deficit, and about another $20 million for things like unemployment. So it's very conservative. At the minimum, next year.
Conservative in that you don't feel that you'll need it for those purposes?
Conservative, you could say it that way, I'll say it another way. It would be perfectly acceptable to say reduce that OPEB assignment from most organizations don't have one at the school district level, you could reduce that from 70 to say 30. But even without adjusting any of those assignments, we'd have 60 million at the end of next year.
At the end of 27, 28.
Correct.
So, I'm sorry, would you go back, so what,
26,
126 was,
27.
126 was for what year?
The 126 was, this is what we'll have projected at the end of this year.
End of this year, 25, 26.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah,
126, okay. And then at the end of 27,
20.
7, you'll have 60?
60, yes.
And then 27, 28, will you have used it all up, or no?
27, 28, it depends upon the enactment of this, school closure
So
plan.
what
It
would the range
changes
be?
everything.
What would the range be? If you don't do anything, are you out, and if you do something, you'll have?
If
how much
we
left over?
don't do anything, we would be, I'll go right to the table, we'd be, this is the plan that I had submitted. If we do nothing, we would be about 20 million under our $200 million threshold.
Well, I don't really,
So zero.
right now, I'm not concerned about
Okay, so-
200 million,
so what-
just how much,
With the 200
Be
million,
available
we have
balanced
zero,
budget.
zero.
0, if
Well,
you
you
don't
have
do
hundred and
anything.
eighty, but you've
Correct,
got a
Frank.
requirement of having 200.
Right,
So there's still money there, but
correct, Frank.
you're, it's like the rainy day fund, you're not
Yes.
supposed to use it.
Gotcha, okay. And if you do, make these changes, close the 4 schools, what would that fund balance be at the end of
So you'd have
27,
a
28?
minimum of like 40 million.
Okay.
Question, are you going with the assumption of flat revenues through those, each of those out
No, I
years?
believe it's like 2.3% increase.
And that increase is coming from where?
The state is 86% of our revenues, and we have a pretty good record of, I know it's based on the governor's, or the legislator's final approved budget, but of projecting out the financial aid from our foundation aid based on a variety of factors, some of which, even though enrollment has slowed, we have increased ELL and special education counts, which has a multiplier effect in your foundation aid formula. So, county exec, we think 2.3% is conservative.
The only concern, like I think all the other members, is even after these actions, there still will be a deficit, and there will still be no real way to solve the deficit minus a mass infusion of new revenues, meaning we could talk about what the fund balance is gonna be in any one year, but when you draw down your fund balance significantly annually, you get to a point where you will run out of fund balance and have that not as a backstop. It may not be in the next 2 or 3 years, but it probably would happen within the next 6 or 7.
All right, let me,
Go ahead, let the
I'm
superintendent
sorry,
go.
go ahead, sir. Yeah, I think the plan that we submitted to you, that's, we're planning to close 4 schools. And I think based on our projection, that's pretty much trying to be conservative at this point. We may go higher than that. So we're still doing the work. We plan to reveal the plan to our board sometime in fall. Our goal is not to be somewhere around $30 million deficit if we're gonna bring it even lower. As we're looking at those numbers, how we can consolidate our schools, that will be the plan coming forth during the fall. So very mindful that the number that we've submitted for schools, that's a little bit too conservative. So we're still looking at more.
Thank you. Andy?
And I just have a general question. Nate, was your analysis all based on the fact of what the fund balance was at the end of June 30th, 2024?
No, we used the,
Because, what is the actual number from June 30th to 2025? Is that 387.2?
yes.
Jim? Okay.
Yeah.
No, the deficit plan came to us before the first quarter results.
Oh,
So the numbers that Jim just used were a little bit more updated.
oh, okay.
Yes.
County executive, I can go back to your point. I hear you loud and clear, and about fund balance, can't last forever. That's what precipitated this whole plan, and we're working on it to address exactly what your concern is.
I'm just, like everyone's concerned, there is a plan there, but you still are using fund balance on an annual basis.
Correct.
The other question I had, which is more, I think would be more, much more immediate, is are there any restrictions in the BTF contract or others that would prevent you from laying off the individuals that you're proposing, or are these attrition cuts from retirements?
The answer, no, to your first question. Your second one, would impact, 151, say 130 teachers. We currently get about, our hope is through attritions and vacancies, but there would be some, terminations. We can't guesstimate that. Our workforce is relatively fluid.
Excuse me.
Oh, I thought
No, I said he
that-
just-
Okay. This year we'll have 230 retirements. Maybe 90 of those will be BTF. So I couldn't answer your question right now, the second part of your question.
Appreciate the answer.
Go ahead.
And so, thank you for that explanation on how you came up with 4 schools, because I was gonna ask about how did we come up with the 4 schools, the number of schools being closed, and so you talked about that possibly being a conservative number. And so when you're looking, you and the staff are looking at the school closure, is it a mix of a fiscal type thing and an operational type thing to best serve the student? How are you looking at that mix? And I guess the other thing I'll say, it was, I believe it was reported in some of the media that when the decision was made not to close the 2 original schools, that was because of some community input and worried about the impact that it may have on some of the communities. And so I'm just wondering, how does the team look at the school closures and that whole mix of things?
All right, starting with the first process, keep in mind it was pretty much 3 months upon my arrival.
Right, yeah.
Being a new superintendent, even though I did it for 10 years in North Carolina, it was not the right time to do it. It was not the right time because I have to be well versed with a different set of data when it comes to student achievement, how all those buildings were, whether or not we're gonna leave some of those facilities, some community desert and all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at all that. But when their recommendation came to me, and I knew that there was something there that was a little bit political, that I don't want to give more detail at this point. I think what I told our board, I'm going to take back that process, and I'm working with a close team of my cabinet members. It's really close to my vest, and I know exactly how many schools we're gonna close, but we're still working on all the details when it comes to operations, and we also wanna make sure that we're not going to deviate from the mission of educating our students. We really wanna make sure that student achievement is a priority, even though we're trying to balance the budget. We wanna make sure that the needs of our SPED students and all the different programming that we offer are going to be available. So with that, I feel confident with the process that's we're going through, and sometime around October, I'll be able to bring it to the board. And keep in mind, if we're talking about 4 schools or more, which is not gonna be easy to be able to sell to the community. It's going to be brutal conversations around that time, and I'm gonna present all the facts and the rationale why we came up with these schools, and then we're gonna go from there.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I know, I believe it's, and you mentioned that equity is that conversation and how you're looking at supporting the students to make sure that they are able to achieve, and so I appreciate that portion. I look forward to hearing the future plans and how you're gonna execute.
If I can tag team on that question though, Superintendent, I mean, there's been a large movement for community schools essentially, so these are no longer schools, but they're actually parts of, really important parts of the community, so I would hope that we would have a plan if we're gonna look at any of these closures on how we're gonna make the community as whole as we possibly can. You may not look at it as your responsibility, but I think it falls into your lap as your responsibility, whether you like it or not. And I think that's part of the problem that we saw with the 2 closings, is that we didn't have a plan to say, now what's the next steps for our community? How are we gonna bring the services that were at those schools into my community again, whether that means working with the county or the city or other state agencies to make sure that they don't become abandoned properties that hurt these communities. So I just sort of ask that as part of whatever plan you're having, and maybe we would even request it, is that we would want to know what you're gonna do to make those communities whole, because I think that's an important thing that you need to do. Jim, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
What's your estimate of, the contracts are all out?
Yep.
So what's your estimate of salary increases from when you started this to now with the inflation? Just wondering how that, and I don't want you to say what you're gonna negotiate.
Thank you.
The contract's
That's what I was
for,
gonna say.
but on the other hand, I think it's gonna be critical in these out years that if we were looking a year ago, we would have said 2 or 2.5, and now I don't know that you're not gonna be able to get in without 3 or 3.5. And it would seem to me that we would need some kind of plan that says, I've gotta fund these contracts.
Yep, that was certainly a large part of next year's budget, and it will be part of the 4-year plan. And I appreciate your sensitivity. On page 7 of our proposed budget, I leave it rather vaguely. Included in the proposed budget are estimates for potential settlements of the bargaining units for BTF, BCSA, and PICA. We think we have an adequate amount in next year's budget, and we'll be providing you an update on the out years when we complete our 4-year plan.
But was any of that coming out of your reserves?
No,
So all of that is in your operating budget that
Yes.
you put into
yes,
all of that to go
yes.
forward? Okay.
Well,
Which uses the reserve.
which we balance the budget.
No, I
Yeah.
get the whole.
Yeah, it's absolutely in our proposed budget.
But, I mean, I think that's gonna be critical in moving forward anywhere along there, because
Yeah.
I think you need to have, contracts. Is there have you done any adjustments for the fixed tier 6 or the analysis that, the TRS or NERS may have very different adjustments than what you would have expected a year ago?
We have not included any of that. We included the status quo in next year's budget.
Okay, just to find out. Okay. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, Superintendent, I understand that you will not be hiring an outside consultant to help with the school closings, you're gonna do it in-house?
We're gonna do it in-house.
So that $500,000 to $1 million that you thought it would cost is not going to be spent on an outside consultant?
Correct.
Great, thanks.
And if I could comment that
Go
the
ahead.
process is going very well. This week's meeting was the best of the 4 we've had so far.
Can I ask you one last question about Da Vinci and where you guys are on the move from there to Buffalo State?
We're still in a conversation. There are a lot of parties involved. I had a meeting probably about a month ago. Mayor was a part of that, being a former legislature, that they were able to push that bill, and we had other local delegation as well. We had a SUNY chancellor, and SUNY Buff State president. So we had really good conversation, but there's still a concern. Now that's based on the price escalation, we're looking at probably $11 million more to be able to move to Buff State. So that's where we're having a conversation with my board. Hopefully, probably in another month, we'll be able to come up with a final decision where we're heading with that.
Because that should have some impact on closing schools and moving people around.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Additional questions? Anything else? Thank you, Superintendent, for coming. We really do appreciate
Thank you for having us.
that
and
you're here, Jim. As always, thank you for
your support as
time
well.
and everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And you're more than welcome to stay the whole time.
Run while you can.
The city's so hot.
All right, quick question, Andy,
Yes.
Andy, why so easy on us today?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hey,
He's
hey.
gonna wait till next time.
Jim, you should know better. You get out while the getting's good.
Jim, you gave us all the answers.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
thank
you
you.
go.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
We'll now move to review the proposed budget and related four-year financial plan, beginning with the City of Buffalo. The mayor submitted the proposed City of Buffalo 2026-2027 budget and the 2027-2030 four-year financial plan on April 15th, 2026. The BFSA staff report on the city's proposed budget and financial plan are located under tab 3 in your board books. Jeanette and Bryce have prepared an overview of these items, so I'll ask the two of them to start. Bryce, you want to start?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board. I'd like to say I'd be brief with my comments, but we've been here before and takes a little time to go through this. So first slide we have here is the presentation of the four-year financial plan. Fiscal year 26-27, it is balanced at $681.1 million. Over the 4 years, revenues increased to $717.3 million. On the expenditure side, expenditures only increased up to $710.5 million. The administration has built in a surplus in the 3 out years of the financial plan to address the fund balance, to refill, top off the fund balance per the city charter. The next slide we have here is comparing the adopted budget of 25-26 and the year-end projection to the proposed 26-27 budget. Budget to budget, that's an increase. Before I go into that, just to clarify on the projected year-end, that's as of December 31st, and we backed out the ARPA piece because that hits both revenues and transfers out. It's artificial spending in the plan, so we removed that to really make it more of an apple-to-apples comparison. Proposed budget of $681.1 million, so budget to budget, that's an increase of $59 million. But compared to where the revenues are going to be at year end, that's an increase of $61.6 million. Compared to the expenditures of almost $650 million, that's an increase of $31.6 million. This pie chart here identifies the major components of the revenue. As I stated, it's $681.1 million this year. The City of Buffalo contributes the most at 49.5%, almost $340 million. That's followed by state assistance at $202 million, almost 30%. County piece, that's the sales tax at $122.7 million, at 18%. The transfers in represents, that $12.12 million only represents the transfers in from the enterprise funds. Does not reflect the transfers in from the parking mobility. That is grouped in under the city revenue. And then you have other, almost $5 million, and then the federal assistance is down to $3 million. So we're gonna jump into taxes. One of the most significant pieces of the budget. Again, a lot of airplay of late. Taxes increased from $254.8 million up to $295.5 million over the 4 years. That's an increase of $40.8 million. Significant, when you look at this, you really need to combine the real property tax levy and STAR together to get the full property tax levy. Those two pieces work together. We have mortgage tax pilots, the occupancy tax, and then the prior year collections, which is a new initiative by the administration. And then under all other taxes in the 3 out years, we have the abandoned vacant property surcharge that's included in there. So those are the main pieces that feed into the property tax calculation, or the taxes portion. The estimated taxes for fiscal year 27 are estimated at $254.8 million and represents 37.4% of total estimated revenue. The real property tax levy is $230.6 million. That's an increase of $46.1 million, or 25% compared to the current year. Projected increase by 16% or 40.8 million over the financial plan. It's really driven by the real property tax levy. The plan includes a 25% increase in year one, followed by a 9, and then 2 5% increases in the 2 out years. So that provides, projected to provide 46.5 million in additional property tax revenue over the 3 out years. Incrementally, and that totals 92.6 million when you take all 4 years together. City is currently utilizing below 46% of available taxing levy. Constitutional tax limit is 502.1 million. So that means there's 271.5 million, or 54% of the limit available at this time. And real property tax levy projected increase between 12.6 to 20 million, almost 21 million annually. And it's really the one revenue the city really has any control over. When we went back to that one pie chart and we saw how much was coming from the state and the other areas, the property tax is the main one the city has control over. This one, historical, 20-year look back on the real property tax levy. You can see in 2005-06, it was at 146.3 million. Relatively flat, actually decreased down to 137.2 in fiscal year 2014. And you can see it's really in the last 5 years that you've seen the increase in the real property tax levy. And just as an aside, when we went back and looked at the 1993 study that was done on the city of Buffalo, real property tax levy at the time was 140 million. So even between 1993 to 2006, it was just over a $6 million increase. But both times, the city was up against that constitutional tax limit, so they were kind of boxed in at that time and were limited to how they could increase revenues via property tax. So a couple components of the taxes that we went over is the prior year collections and outstanding taxes for prior years up through and including 2023. That totals 14.5 million over the financial plan. Bulk of that is that 10 million in fiscal year 27. Then it decreases by 8.5 million down to 1.5 million in the 3 out years. The vacant and abandoned property surcharge is a new tax that requires New York State legislative action to implement. Now it is in 3 out years, so there is time to pursue that legislative action. But the combination over the 3 years is 4.5 million. Intergovernmental revenues. Major components of intergovernmental revenues include state aid, which is annually 161.3 million, followed by the temporary state aid, which this is the 3rd year of it, so I don't know how long temporary really means. Then we have the sales tax, the tri-state compact casino revenue, cannabis tax, Medicare Part D, which has been zeroed out over the financial plan, and all other. The 314 million budgeted in fiscal year 27 represents 46.1% of total revenues. Intergovernmental revenue category fluctuates over the financial plan based on some assumptions, specifically in year 2, where there's some one-time revenues. So increases by 3.9 million in fiscal year 27, increase to 26.2 million in fiscal year 28, and then it decreases down to 315.8 million in 29, and then increases again to 320 million in 29-30. And as I said, that's really reflecting some one-time actions that are included in fiscal year 27-28. Tribal state compact, the casino revenue, there is a total of 71.5 million included in the financial plan. 10.5 million is the annual component of it received by the city. There is a one-time catch-up payment of 29.5 million in 27-28. The annual revenue estimate could be overstated by up to 3 million based on collection of actual receipts. Receipt of revenue is questionable due to lack of current agreement and what the new agreement would potentially look like. And then further uncertainty is there unknown future contract terms. The current compact extension expired on March 31, 24. And then beginning of April 21, 24, the payments were received, held in escrow until a final new contract is achieved. New York State in 24-25 has advanced the city 10.5 million, and then there's been a commitment to advance another 10.5 million in May of this year for the current fiscal year. State aid. So there's an inclusion of the temporary state aid over the financial plan. The 30-day amendments did include an increase of 15 million. So current year in 24-25 it was increments of 5 million each. Now it's been increased up to 15 million in 26-27. And then the cities included 5 million in 3 out years. The state financial plan doesn't indicate that that will be there. And that it will be back down to the 161.3 million. So in 26-27, total state aid is estimated at 176.3 million, and I already mentioned the temporary aid is maintained. Sales tax is estimated at 122.7 million in fiscal year 27. It increases by 15.3 million to 138 million by 2030. 6.7 million increase in fiscal year 27, followed by 5% increase that gets you up to 128.8 million in fiscal year 28, then followed by 4%, then a 3% in the final year of the financial plan. Just for historical note, it did increase by 4.6 million, 4% between fiscal year 24-25 and our current year end estimate. The current year end estimate is approximately 119.4 million, which is favorable by 5 million compared to the adopted budget. Next,
Excuse me, are these estimates considered conservative, Mark, or? these-
So for 26-27, we will
I
run
think
roughly.
very conservative, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yeah,
Are they?
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, there are 2 more months, left in their fiscal year. I think you're gonna see 5% growth for the remainder of the year. So I think they're gonna have a year-end, projection of about $120.6 million. So when they budget, 122, million, I mean, yes, is that year over from budget to budget, 6.7% growth, but that's actually a really low growth factor. I frankly think they're leaving about $1.5 million on the table in terms of a
Yeah.
decent, so it's on the conservative side.
Last year,
Okay.
we noted that we thought that their budget for sales tax was not just conservative, but under budget.
Under budget?
Yeah, so these numbers don't concern us with regards to what the actual receipts
Okay.
are.
No, good.
next category of revenue we're touching upon is fines. Fines include the parking tags, fines and penalties, traffic violations, bus arm cameras. Prior year collections is a new category. It's a recoup outstanding fines and fees from a couple different areas, be it parking tags, traffic violations. It's all rolled into one line to show the prior year at 6.2 million as a 1-year impact. Over the 4-year financial plans, fines are estimated to decrease by 5.1 million or 25%. And it's really due to the inclusion of prior year collections of 6.2 in the current year, or fiscal year 27. So fines total 20.5 million or 3% of the fiscal year 27 budget. Fines decreased by 5.1 million. Included is the 6.2 for collections of prior year fines. Currently, there's over 16.8 million in uncollected fines outstanding, including parking tags, traffic violations, and traffic adjudication. Increases in out years is attributed to the parking tags, fines, and penalties, and the traffic violation fines. Increases attributed to enhanced enforcement and rates. The remaining categories are going to include service charges, non-property taxes, license and permits, miscellaneous revenue, as well as interest income. Those 5 revenues total 59.2 million in fiscal year 27, and increase up to 71.9 million in the final year of the financial plan. That's a 12.7 million or a 21% increase over that time. One thing I do wanna point out with miscellaneous, there are no large one-time property sales in that line. That's something we've seen over the years when there's been different, approaches in addressing the, budget.
Can I just go back to the fines? Does the administration have a procedure or a policy in place as to how they're gonna go back and collect these fines?
Yes, there's a few different pots there.
I'm sorry?
There's a few different angle approaches there. So the biggest chunk is honestly prior, a huge array of fees and fines, a lot of them housing related.
Mhm.
We've now sent the collections that were sitting there, so we sent out, there's over $100 million
Okay.
total out there. That treasurer is
How
now sent
much?
out, over $100 million. The treasurer sent out to collections. On the parking area, specifically in traffic items,
Yeah.
we now are finally getting software in place to suspend registrations.
Okay.
And so once you get that notice from the state DMV, you're gonna come downtown and pay that ticket.
So you,
Pretty quickly.
so you think it's pretty realistic that you'll be able to collect these?
For the prior ones, right. And you'll see that we load ultimately the prior action in 26, 27. That's not gonna continue forever.
Right.
But that's reflecting the Ryan administration saying,
Yeah.
oh my God, look at all this outstanding stuff, we gotta get caught up here.
Okay.
So the 100 million, that's, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The 100 million is back, how far are we talking?
Up to 8 years, it just has a,
Per the
some
statute.
detail, yeah.
It depends on the statute of what you're trying to collect. So parking's 8 years, typical invoice is 7 years, so there's different statutes.
Mark? Yeah, with regards to the prior collections and outstanding taxes, you have a $10 million portion for the upcoming budget year. Are you
Yeah.
planning on doing a foreclosure sale?
It's underway. It's scheduled for the convention center for April of 2027. We're foreclosing on over $22 million in properties. We went conservative and put it at 10 for what would come in either at the auction or after the redemption date in August. Yeah, where we could, we really did try and be conservative. Obviously, in the 4-year plan in particular, I understand there's some assumptions here, but we did try and be conservative where we could.
Go ahead.
I don't even know where you would start on whether it's conservative or aggressive, just because you haven't done it in so long, right?
Yeah.
How did you decide what was conservative? It looks like you're saying you'll collect about 10 of 22, that was the property tax hit?
That's the, for the in-round foreclosure.
So that's
yeah.
like 45%.
That's partially, we did have some, obviously we're going back to 2019, but Commissioner Shell had some historical data, and also he looked at the properties that will be coming up and kind of his best guess on properties that would redeem or not redeem, so focus around that.
Like other municipalities that have done this, and you've seen.
Buffalo's fairly
success?
unique, so we kind of looked at just some, his experience and past practice.
Okay.
Wait, what? Bryce?
So all other revenues, as I said, increasing by 12.7 million, 21% of the financial plan. Service charges are increasing by 900,000 or 5.3% in 26-27, and they increase by 8.3 million over the financial plan. Increase is attributed to plan increase in reimbursement from the Buffalo Sewer Authority and an increase to parking fees. The licenses and permits are increasing by 300,000 in 26-27, and an increase 1.8 million over the financial plan. Multiple fee increases for license and permit, utilization of those permits as well. Interest income is budgeted increase 1.6 million over the financial plan. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the decrease in miscellaneous reflects the planned sale of city-owned parking ramps to the Buffalo Mobility Parking Authority. And that will come in as a transfer from the parking authority as opposed to miscellaneous revenue. So it's really recategorizing where the revenues come from. This slide on revenue is the transfers in and other resources over the financial plan. So it's going to include the enterprise funds, water board, parking fund, and the solid waste, the parking authority transfer I mentioned, as well as the reserve for capital projects. So transfers in increased 2.3 million or almost 19% over the financial plan. The water board transfers are increasing 1.6 million. Parking transfers are increasing 700,000. This transfer is decreased between current fiscal year 26 into 26-27 do the anticipated debt service payments for the ramp sill. Solid waste transfers are eliminated over the financial plan, and then transfers to the parking authority total 22.5 million in the out years. So 15.1 million in 26-27, 7.4 million in 27-28. And just to reemphasize, there is a planned amount, 26.5 million in the current budget. So those are the three pieces of that to get close to $49 million. And then there's also the 5.5 million reimbursement from New York State, and that's unavailable for general operations. So, this pie chart really breaks out the major expenditure categories. The single largest one is fringe benefits at almost 33%, totals 223.4 million. Followed by interfund transfers out at 100.8 million, roughly 15%. Police department is at 120 million, that's 17.6%. Fire department 78 million, 11.5%. Public works 48 million, 7%. I'd like to note, just in regards to public works, they did break out parks, so that public works number is separate of parks. They have their own budget line and detail behind that. Utilities at almost $21 million at 3%, and then all other remaining departments, approximately 12 remaining departments and other general charges total 90.2 million or 13%. So this schedule is really a summary, high level of major departmental expenditures as well as the general charges. You can see police, fire, and public works are broken out at the departmental level, so you see that increasing from 329 million in fiscal year 27 to 349.1 million in fiscal year 30. And then you go down to the general charges, we have identified some of the larger fringe benefit pieces, the health insurance, pension contributions, like Medicare, salary adjustment. Then you have utilities broken out, and then other. And then you can see right at the bottom of this chart where they're showing the transfer to the fund balance of almost $30 million to replenish it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just on the fringe line,
Yeah.
the fringe benefit, that's roughly 65% of the total actual salary cost. Has that been standard for the city? And is there, fringe benefits in the public sector are expensive, I'm not gonna deny that, but that seems pretty high at 65%. Every dollar you're putting in 2/3 of another dollar in fringe for salary.
We get especially high hit because, you know, the vast majority of our employees are in the police and fire pension system, which is a very expensive system. So I think that that's a huge driver above county fringe rates.
And the state's still using, I think, 63% for theirs when they're asking us money for grants and things. So,
But on the healthcare side, I know that's an area, a key area for potential savings, both for active and retiree option, to try and get more of them to Medicare plans.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Ben said. The big issue there is the police and fire pension. That has increased substantially over the last couple of years. And that's set at the state comptroller. There's a lot, as you're aware, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but it really doesn't look like there will be much relief.
Are those both 20 now?
Fire and police,
25,
yes.
55.
Both.
Yeah, minimum 20, yeah.
So why are fringes going down?
So that's, in the 4-year plan, that's based on, again, some optimistic assumptions that we're able to negotiate.
Oh,
Getting some bargaining units
Gotcha.
into LMHF,
okay.
and also buying out retirees who do not have a Medicare Advantage plan, into getting a commensurate insurance, but that takes advantage of a Medicare Advantage plan to subsidize it. Because for those folks that don't have a Medicare piece, it's $2,000 per month per member.
And that would have to be negotiated?
So you don't technically negotiate with retirees, right, because they're no longer in the bargaining unit, it's a separate, their union's reps can play a role in it, but it's more of like an offer that you would issue of some kind, right? So let's say folks want more portability, they don't wanna be stuck in whatever the high mark network is around here regionally, they wanna move to Florida or the Southwest or something, you offer them that, or offer them some other enhanced benefit, just by opting to go to Medicare Advantage plus a subsidy package.
There's no requirement at this time to have it once they hit 65 to immediately
Most of our units are there now, but we have a chunk from, you know, I'd say basically like a chunk way before the county shifted over, that we're still keeping those going, yeah.
Thank you.
So general fund expenditures are budgeted to increase from $622.1 million to $681.1 million. That represents a $59 million increase or 9.5%. Total departmental spending of $329 million. Year to year, that's an increase of $43.1 million or 15.1%. Includes an increase of $14.7 million for projected personal service costs. Budgeted attrition vacancies are in the budget maintained over the financial plan at $17 million annually. Includes $15.1 million increase for overtime. That's $13.5 million for police and fire department alone. Services are increasing by $15 million or 45.5%. There's an increase of $5.9 million or 52% for supplies, and then an increase of $6.8 million for capital outlay. Some significant changes at the different departmental levels. Police department is increasing by $13.8 million. $9 million of the increase is for personal service costs. Overtime is increasing from 12.7 to 19.7 million. Fire department is increasing by 5.4 million. 2.7 million is for personal service costs. Overtime is increasing by 7.2 million. Is increasing from 7.2 million to 13.7 million. And it's offset by a decrease of 4.6 million under annual salary. And then there's an increase of 1.6 million for supplies and 1.1 million for services. The mayor and executive department is increasing by 1.8 million year to year. $1 million for increase for personal service costs, $400,000 for services, and $300,000 for supplies. Public Works is increasing by 16.9 million, 54.3%. So that's an increase of 1.3 for personal service costs, 6.2 million for both services and capital outlay, and then a 3.2 million increase for supplies. Parks Department is increasing by 900,000, 300,000 increase for personal service costs, $500,000 increase for services. MIS, Management Information Systems Department, is increasing by 1.6 million, $1 million increase for outside services, $500,000 increase for supplies. And then the Parking Department's increasing 1.3 million, 700,000 increase for personal service costs. It's reflective of the addition of 8 parking enforcement officers and relocation of the TBA for traffic
Bryce,
violations.
was there an estimate of how much then they would bring in, given you're adding 8 enforcement officers?
I think the calculation when we were discussing it is on average, each enforcement officer generated around 200,000, 215,000. So the 8 there would bring in just over 1.6 million. If you're just.
So they under their estimates, it's gonna pay for itself.
And it's an extension of where they currently are, just because with the current workforce, they're kind of restricted to how far they can go out and where they're monitoring. With additional officers, they can cover the whole city a little more efficiently. So all their departments are a net decrease of 4.5 million. Out years over the financial plan, 2% increase, so there's limited resources for labor contracts there. Maintains approximately 300 vacancies over the financial plan. As I said, the attrition amount was $17 million. And this budget, specifically the first year, represents the strategic and targeted investments in services and capital outlay the administration is looking to make to, one, try to capture more revenues, some of those prior year collections. So without the investments, they wouldn't be able to really pursue some of those revenues. And two, address some of the quality of life issues that the Mayor Ryan ran on.
I have a question regarding the vacancies. Are considering the overtime, as you know, puts pressure on it, and you have such a large increase in overtime, which is probably realistic in police and fire. Are they keeping vacancies in police and fire? Where are those most of those
We're,
vacancies
we're,
coming from?
we're gonna be able to squeeze out one more class for fire off the current list. Police list is nuked, so they gotta do a fresh list. We're moving towards the state's test, thank God, for both fire and police recruit classes. So we're trying to get a class advertised and get a class going at some point in early 27. It's probably for police, that's like the timeline.
So,
But honestly, on the vacancy count, given the efficiency of hiring in the city of Buffalo, as we try to work on that, I'm not concerned about maintaining this vacancy rate, because it seems to take about 6 months to hire anybody, even if they passed a test, so I'm not too worried about that.
But where's the, I guess to your point, you're saying, are we trying to hold it in police and fire, or is it?
No, I mean, we assume it's gonna be those classes, right? So, but it's just overall vacancy run, Jessica can speak to it a little bit more if you want to, but
What was the question?
on the,
So the original was like, where are the vacancies?
the vacancy
the
control.
300 vacancies, where are those
Oh, they're
primarily?
just dispersed throughout every department. So we kind of look at what's vacant now, what do we think we're gonna hire during the year, and also what titles are just holding someone's permanent position, and we take an estimate from there. So there could be a department with no attrition, there could be a department with a lot of attrition, just depending.
So
Well,
what
also, no,
percent are-
we pivoted from, in the previous budget, they had vacancy control was handled on a position-by-position basis, as opposed to like what you're used to, like a turnover account for each department. So we moved back to that model, because there's gonna be fungibility, right?
Right.
We may need to hire this job, we gotta hire somebody, but someone retires that we don't know about, someone gets another job, there's always that flex, right? So we tried to move to a more even spread on attrition.
Again, my concern was just because police and fire make up a substantial amount of all
Right.
departmental employees, then you must have a substantial amount of vacancies for the police and fire.
Yeah, but I will say, on the police and fire side, that's where you get the diminishing returns on overtime versus vacancy savings, because again, that state police and fire pension system is so expensive, it really behooves us to get new recruits in, because they're at the higher pension tier, and we're not cranking up those overtime numbers into for pension payments for veteran firefighters and cops.
But piggybacking on that is, have you done an analysis, and we've asked, I guess, probably before you were here, is that overtime in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but at some point, there is a break-even point. And the question is, have you done an analysis to figure out where that break-even point is, so you know it's time to stop doing overtime and time to start hiring people? Because you don't wanna hire people and then add 65% on.
Right.
And then, when you could cover some of that with overtime.
I know, yeah.
Right.
I know the new police commissioner who has a financial background is working on one of those for BPD right now.
But I guess
actually,
we'd
so,
like to
yeah.
see how
Yeah.
you do that. I guess that'd just be a request of
Yeah.
the board.
But our, like I said, our rough looking at it is, again, on the fire and police side, new hires are gonna actually, I think, pay for themselves fairly quickly.
And so, just to touch on that point, I think it's also important when we talk about that overtime balance, to look at the activities that the individuals are doing. So fire, obviously, a lot of overtime could result in injuries and some other stuff on
Right.
the job. Police could result in some poor judgment type stuff that impacts the city in other ways. So obviously, we gotta look at that. And then I know your office has been talking with the state as far as figuring out getting into New York Helps, which will facilitate that quicker time into.
Yeah, we should hopefully,
Yeah.
I think the public hearing happened for that first chunk, so.
Yeah, so that will accelerate that, speed at which individuals get to go.
Yeah.
So on the attrition, 17.1 million, that would be equivalent to roughly 310 jobs. You currently have 441 vacancies. Do you plan on either filling or cutting any of those extra 110 jobs? You'd only have to keep 300 vacant
Yeah.
in order to meet your
We
attrition.
are trying to expedite hiring, yes. And in particular, this is an issue because of the acting time issue that the controller, focused on. We need to get more folks into permanent positions and then begin to fill their backfills, so it's something we're working on. But and particularly on the public works side, I would say we're fairly significantly understaffed in an array of areas.
And I will say this last promo ad for New York Helps, that accelerates the ability for individuals that are
Yes.
provision or whatever. after
Whoever
time.
came up with that was a really smart person, and it's a program that should
All
have
right, I'm done here. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Should have taken advantage of for a long time, yes.
We appreciate it in the county.
Bryce, go ahead.
So I would just like to add on in regards to the discussion on the positions and where they're at. There are over 400 current vacancies. At least 86 of them are in the police department, but at this time, there are no eligibility lists. So it's going to take the city 6 to 8 months for the process to play out. So it'll be some time before they can bring in new police recruit classes. So that's pursuing the New York State helps. And then similar on fire, there's over 80 vacancies there currently. So if we go through another quarter, there could be another 15.
Yeah,
So,
Well, that affects overtime
Yes,
in a serious way.
and that's a much more complicated onboarding process, you have to have an entire
Yeah.
academy, right?
Yeah.
So-
so those two, over 160 employee and the FTE count there, but just due to the process of the onboarding and the training, the city's kind of restricted to how quickly they
How
can
fast
move
that
on
happens,
that.
yeah.
Is there any way to accelerate that process?
There's minor things, but not to have a major impact.
I mean, there's no eligibility list for the police department right now. That's expired, so it's just beginning offering the exam again. Then the actual recruit class, when they're selected, they have 2 sessions a year, July and January through ECC. So timing of it's really restricted.
I mean, the academies is the only. Right. But you get fallout. I mean, you get so much fallout.
Yeah. I guess the other question is that if we have this many vacancies and we have no real way to fill them, and we'd want to, then the only other thing is to look at the service that we're providing and either figure out a different way to provide them, which may mean not using, directly police and others to do some kind of police services. That obviously needs to be worked out with the PBA as we go through, which may be somewhat difficult. But, I mean, it does seem to me that that's your alternative, is to try to figure out. I mean, I think about like Sabres games. Do we need as many police, or can we have some other kind of help or security there that would lead to less people who are cheaper?
But
And
they're
that
gonna
may or
start
may
charging
not.
more. They're
They
gonna
may-
start charging more for Sabres.
They
That's not
may or
a
may
city.
not, yeah.
That's not a city issue, because it's the sheriff's.
No, I get it. I'm just trying to say, in some places, I mean, we've already talked about charging more people for events, for safety and things, which I think is
The
long
special
over-
events fee, yeah.
Yeah,
It's about
it's
200
long over.
200 a year that have up.
Yeah, I mean, it's long overdue, but it does seem like, are there places that we put police in that we can move to someplace else now to be able to do those services?
You
And
think
then-
are you suggesting, or at least believing me, the private sector?
It could be the private sector, could be individuals. They wouldn't have to be working for a company necessarily. They could, as individuals, that could be a public sector program. Yeah.
One more question on vacancies. Was there, considering the issue with vacancies, it creates a savings that you can use, was there ever a thought of just eliminating many of those positions, especially if they can't be filled in the short run, to allow for a reduction in the overall budget, which then reduces the need for additional revenue, including the property tax increase?
So I think per your resolution, you'll
That's where I was
see
going
with
with
the
Yeah, I know that's a
contingency
town
plan,
thing.
we're gonna have to have that as a contingency for the one resolve clause in the resolution. The other thing with the city though is when it comes to vacancy deletions, they keep a lot of vacancies that are there as like someone's fallback job. So it's a little more
Yeah.
stringent than you're used to with the county, which so does create some obstacles on doing vacancy deletions.
But they would be the fallback
Yeah.
job, but then it protects somebody if they lose their top job. But it also prevents somebody else from being deleted, per se. But if you, how many of those jobs exist in the budget that are permanent vacancies to protect somebody who's probably never gonna fall back to that job anyway? I'd be interested to know
And
that.
do you have people who are in permanent jobs, holding a job that somebody can come back to? Because traditionally, you would only hire temp workers to hold those jobs. And do they hold them for more than a year or 2 years or
Oh, yeah.
40 years?
Yeah.
Or what?
I was 8 years in mine.
You were 8 years in
I was
that.
on leave from a budget exam job when I was.
And now he's
budget
back.
It looks like he's going for a job interview.
Right, but also when it comes to, on a general fund overall, you know, budgetary issue, also the attrition account, the turnover account is netting as a
Right.
you know, a reduction against that to sort of help balance things, so.
Yeah, I think as you guys continue to work with the New York State Civil Service and figure out all that stuff, that you'll get it cleaner.
Yeah.
You'll clean it.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
We tried, Bryce, we tried.
We tried. We let you take a breath, that's all we did.
Appreciate it. So, total general charges spending of $251.3 million in fiscal year '27. That's a year-to-year budget increase of $22.6 million. Mainly fringe benefits, which is increasing by $22.4 million. Largest cost escalator there is the contributions to the New York State Police and Fire Retirement System. That's budgeted at $66.7 million. That's a year-to-year increase of $17.5 million. Followed by increase for active employee health insurance at $9.6 million. That's budgeted at $61.7 million. That does include some Medicare Part B savings for pharmaceuticals. The retiree health insurance decreases annually over the financial plan. The Medicare Part D savings are estimated between 15 to 16.4 million. And then there's an estimated reduction of participants of roughly 20% a year there, as was discussed a few minutes ago. ERS contributions are increasing 300,000 to 12.4 million, and then the salary adjustment line is included in fiscal year '27 at 6.3 million. It's a year-to-year increase of 2.5 million, but then it's eliminated in 3 out years of our financials. So,
What does that mean, eliminated in the 3 out years?
so in fiscal year '27 it is budgeted at 6.3 million, and then in the 3 out years it's 0. So that salary adjustment line that's broken out discretely is not funded in the 3 out years of the financial
But
plan.
is it not put in the salary line instead of a
Well,
salary adjustment?
I was gonna say, they're carrying 2% increases at the departmental level.
So it's not eliminated, it's just put in a different line. It's put in the salary line instead of a salary adjustment.
As a very rough tool to show,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
some padding for COLAs, yeah.
Yes.
And that $6.3 million amount,
It's based
how
on
does that
a
calculate?
2% COLA across all employees, but obviously, you know, we're not gonna get into having negotiations until after we know what the budget shows, because that's gonna be a huge determinant factor in what we can actually negotiate.
If I may, on that, where are you with all the contracts, what's the status of them?
Every single one is up, except for, we'll call them like the baby unions, those expire in June, so that's the,
Police, fire?
operating engineers, no, those are all up, but yeah, the 3 little ones that are left are,
expired last year.
yeah.
Inspectors,
Yeah.
stationary.
Inspectors, yeah, stationary engineers,
In white and blue,
Oh,
then are still out there.
they're outstanding, yeah.
They expired in 24 to 25, yeah.
So you have multiple years of,
Yeah.
that they'll probably seek increases based on past years that they're not seeing COLAs if they'll ever have some step increases.
There may be some bargaining units, but not to go too far into it, that might be open to actually less or minimal COLA increases in exchange for certain management cleanup on certain things. So I'm definitely very interested in any opportunity there.
Have you started preliminary discussions yet with that anyone?
Very high level, and Corp Council's been engaging an outside
Okay.
labor relations lawyer to come on board. So, but again, the budget is gonna be, again, we really don't know what we're working with here until we see what budget comes out of this process.
I mean, the problem is you're locked because you have no fund balance, so you have no room to negotiate and do the normal things that negotiators do to get you a contract. So the longer we wait, the worse that's gonna get.
You do have a control board, though.
We do, but you know, ultimately, we see it day to day with the, especially on the DPW side, I'm gonna say, because our pay scale is so far back from during the control period, right, when things were frozen, that's why we constantly lose mechanics to the sewer authority or to Erie County or other places, right, because that pay scale is so much better, and they're booking up, right, so.
I think part of our problems that we have now is because we had a wage freeze back then that took
20 years to fix to get to be able to have a normal labor relations plan that goes through. So I think we have to be very, very careful about anything we do. I mean, it may be a tool, but it's not necessarily a fix that will help us out of all of these
It's a
problems.
hammer, right? It's a hammer
Yeah.
on our employers, yeah.
Okay, Bryce?
So over the financial plan, expenditures increased by 29.4 million. So the departmental costs are increasing at 20.1 million, general charges are decreasing at 5.9 million, transfers out increased by 15.2 million. Departmental expenditures increased by 2% annually, increased 6.6 million in 27-28, and then 6.7 and 6.8 in years 3 and 4 of the financial plan. General charges excluding transfers out decreased 1.1% in 27-28, decreased an additional 4.1% in fiscal year 29, and then increased 2.9% in fiscal year 30. Fringe benefits are decreasing over this time by 9.2 million. The contributions to the police and fire retirement system are increasing 10% annually, for a total of 22.1 million. ERS is increasing 2% annually for 800,000. Now, active employee health insurance decreases in fiscal year 27-28 by 10.7 million, and then it begins increasing at 3.7 million, and then an additional 4 million by fiscal year 30. Retiree health insurance decreases annually over the financial plan, 9 million in fiscal year 28, 7.7 million in fiscal year 29, and then 6.7 million in fiscal year 30. And then utilities are increasing.
I'm sorry, what's that based on?
Okay, well, it's a combination of folks that are in those very expensive plans, frankly,
I'm just talking about the,
expiring.
yeah.
And then working on a buyout opportunity to get folks into a Medicare Advantage hybrid plan.
Okay.
And the active is LMHF?
And the active is a push to get LMHF, right? Where, LMHF is at like 12,000 something and change per member, active employee member per year, whereas we're at 18,000 per active member per year.
That's for individual coverage.
And actually, here's a little more detail on the health insurance savings. So we have the active employees' health insurance decreasing by 3.1 million over the financial plan. Savings are dependent on negotiating new labor agreements and move city employees to the Labor Management Healthcare Fund, the LMHF. And then on the it assumes a 20% reduction in costs in fiscal year 28, but then it's followed by 6.5% growth in the 3 out years. The retiree health insurance decreases by the 23.4 million for the financial plan, based on a 20% annual reduction. Savings are dependent on negotiating with individual retirees, moving them from their current traditional health insurance into a Medicare Advantage plan or something comparable.
Yeah.
Interfund transfers out increased by 15.2 million over the financial plan. Fiscal year 27, they're budgeted at 100.8 million, and then they increased to 115.9 million in fiscal year 30. There is a decrease between the current year, 25-26, into next year of 6.7 million, and that's really reflective of the city not going to market the last 2 years to issue debt. The transfer to the school district remains flat at 70.8 million. Transfer to capital debt service fund increases from 29.6 million to 44.7 million, and then the transfer to capital projects fund is flat at $400,000 annually. This is a snapshot of the staffing plan that was included. You can see that they're increasing by roughly 21 individuals over the financial plan year to year from current fiscal year to fiscal year 27. That's an increase of 31 individuals. Really, in other departments outside of police and fire, there's 1 addition to the police department and 3 in the fire department. The rest of the increase is within the others, as we talked about enhancement to parking enforcement, public works, and a few other strategic areas.
Do those include the vacancies?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
these-
So this is just the
total
target.
fill, Total fill.
Yeah.
I just
So
want
as
to
of
make
right
sure everybody
now-
knows what we're
talking about.
This proposed budget is 31 new jobs compared to where the city is as of today, or last year's budget?
The adopted current budget of 25-26.
Where is the city today, you know?
As of third quarter, they had 2,355 positions filled, so that's where, going from where they were filled as March 31st to what's in this proposed budget, that's a variance of 441 positions.
That's what we're talking about.
That's
Right.
So it's a growth of how many, really, compared to the vacancy control pick of 300?
About 310. So if you look at that 2,796, there's really only enough money for 2,486 because $17 million of attrition. But there's only 2,355 filled, so 110 vacancies above and beyond the attrition.
Above and beyond attrition.
So I guess the question is, are there 31 new positions that were created? Forgetting about vacancies and everything else, did we create, new positions within the city? Or are these just additions?
No,
to-
there's only a handful of new positions in the budget. There were some changes from the reorg resolution we passed in December, but that was ultimately relatively flat on headcount. I think and then it netted out to like 17 on the changes. There's a handful of positions in this budget.
And there's even parking officers.
And there's
And that-
That's right.
Yeah.
Two people in inspections, that's relatively minor.
Okay, that brings me to my comments. And before I begin, I just wanted to pause to thank everybody for all their hard work on this budget. Very lengthy, boiled a lot of pages down to a pretty succinct presentation, so thank you for that. And Ben and Jessica and Sarah, I know she's not here, but thank you for your help in getting together a really solid budget. A lot of the concerns that we've expressed as a stability authority has been addressed in this budget. And I'll hit on a couple of those points with my closing comments, but a lot of positives as part of our review. So this schedule that we're looking at right now, this is a conservative schedule that summarizes the risks in the financial plan that we talked about today. And it's broken down into 5 separate categories. The first category is revenue requiring state action, and just inherently we need to carve that out and report that separately because it's outside of the ability of the city of Buffalo to control to a large extent what the city or what the state does with the legislation and their actions. The second category is uncertain revenue and cost savings. This is solely affecting the 3 out years of the plan and focuses on 3 key areas. Prior year collections of real property taxes. The 1.5 million is included in the financial plan over the 3 years. There's some possibility that that doesn't come to fruition over the financial plan, so we included that in that line. There's one-time retro payment for casino revenue, and I'll talk about that separately, and health insurance. So the health insurance that we talked about, these cost savings are estimated as if there's no success in negotiating with the unions, there's no success with negotiating with retirees, and increases of 6.5% insurance year to year is how that was quantified. The third category we labeled as uncertain revenues to be monitored. These are revenues that have the potential to be overestimated based on either historical collections or simply because they're untested and they're new. They have been supported through underlying assumptions by the administration, and for conservative purposes, we did include them on this schedule. For 26-27, these areas include casino revenue, parking fines, interest, parking meter fees, and fines for traffic violations. Additionally included in this area are the prior year collection of taxes and fines, again, simply because it's untested. The out years, the list is expanded to include sales tax, and that amount represents the amount in excess of a 3.5% growth factor. For conservative purposes, we typically wouldn't recommend budgeting more than 3.5% increases in sales tax. There's also an increase to the service contract with the Buffalo Sewer Authority to provide $6.5 million of resources and revenues to the city of Buffalo. That is an item that will need to be negotiated with the sewer authority, and I understand that those conversations have started. The fourth category is the annual casino revenue. I think we're all pretty familiar with that. It's up for negotiation between the state and the gaming commission. Excuse me. So just to be clear, there's two parts to the casino revenue. You might be wondering why there's a $3 million in uncertain revenues and there's a 10.5 below. The revenue, this is a hard revenue to take a look at and get a good estimate for because there's been so many disputes over a 10-year period. On average, the best info that we're looking at has a average range between 7 and 7.5 million of revenue that the city was receiving under terms of the old contract. So we were looking at it, and we've been reporting this for a number of years, that the casino revenue could potentially be overstated just on an annual basis. The second category is the casino revenue in totality due to the ongoing contract negotiations between the state and the Central Gaming Commission. And the fifth category I'll talk about separately in a moment. Next slide. So total year-to-year budget appropriations, we talked about this, there's a $59 million increase year-to-year, or 9.5%. If we take a look at the 25-26 budget and we back out Medicare D revenue to be able to compare apples to apples, it's a $73.3 million year-to-year increase, or 12.1%. Taking it a step further, this is based on December 31st estimates for year end. There's a budgetary shortfall for operations of $24.5 million. The year-to-year increase for an adjusted budget that would bring it more in line with operations is $48.8 million, or 7.7%. Let's see. Various mechanisms were employed in developing the budget. The budget takes important steps towards right sizing, and this was, I alluded to this before. First was an overall right sizing to adjust revenues to a more reasonable level for those that have been overstated in prior years, and we clearly saw that as we were reviewing the budget. The second was to adjust revenues to reflect the initiatives of the Ryan administration, such as parking fines, and that's supported through the hiring of enforcement officers. The third bucket we looked at was looking at appropriations and seeing an adjustment to key areas that we've cited over the years of overtime. Pension was a new one. That one snuck up on us a little bit this year too. The jump in the police and fire retirement system, but that was adjusted in the budget and financial plan to reflect realistic expectations of what will be spent on that. And finally, the budget was adjusted for those investments identified as being critical and having been underfunded in past years. I don't know if you noticed the percentage increase on Bryce's slide before capital outlay. It was over a 400% increase in capital outlay. So over a number of years, that had just been cut out of the budget. We saw the same types of cuts with services, with contracts, with, capital outlay I already mentioned. And we have talked about the potential impact, negative impact that eliminating this funding in past years would have on city services, on the provision of city services. So those, it's a first step being placed back into the budget. Next slide, please. So just looking at budget, the 26-27 proposed budget, there is a revenue that's been included for reimbursement for the Public Works campus. It's in other financing sources for 5.5 million. It will be a replenishment of restricted fund balance, and therefore it's not available for general operations. And we are requiring the budget be modified to reflect that 5.5 million. Did you have a question on that?
No, just.
Okay, okay. The next slide, please. As was mentioned already, there's no unassigned or assigned fund balance available for any budget shortfalls. The Emergency Stabilization Fund, or it's commonly called the Rainy Day Fund, is 42.3 million. It's underfunded at the beginning of the current fiscal year, July 1st, 2025, by 6.9 million. It was used for the first time since inception to address the 2024-25 deficit, and the use of it is significant because it reflects insufficient budgeting practices in the past, and the resulting solution was only to go to the other funding source that was available, which was Rainy Day Fund. All unions, we've mentioned all unions will have expired contracts by June 30th, 2026. There's a 6.3 million in salary adjustments included. Our calculation for a 1% increase is roughly, and this is citywide, and obviously varies depending on union, but citywide, 3.5 million for salary plus benefits for every 1% increase in collective bargaining. Next slide. So the following items were instrumental towards funding the budget. First was the proposed property tax levy of 46.1 million, or a 25% property tax levy increase. This is recurring. It's important to note that the city will retain 271.5 million in taxing authority. There is temporary state aid provided in the amount of 10 million. This is non-recurring. There's the collection of outstanding taxes of fines is 16.2 million, largely non-recurring. Parking fines are increased as a result of increased enforcement. This also pertains to the increase for parking meter fees as well, 2.8 million and 1.4 million respectively. And the sale of the parking ramps or a deficit bond to provide 15.2 million. It's the sale of parking ramps is what's included in the budget. 15.2 million, that's non-recurring. That's been broken down into 3 years of transfers from the Parking Mobility Fund. In total, all right, I'm gonna take a step back for a second. The transfer from parking has been reduced on a year-to-year basis by 2.6 million in anticipation of the increased debt service costs that will be hitting the parking fund, mobility fund. And in total, 52.6 million of non-recurring revenue is included in the 26-27 budget. A couple other minor risks, well not minor, a couple other risks to the budget is the first one, the New York State budget is not yet passed. Included in there are some key items, including the miscellaneous financial assistance for 25-26 of 30 million, and the temporary state aid of 15 million, the casino revenue of 10.5 million that has been mentioned, and at the end of all of this, what our resolution is requesting is a budget gap plan to address the potential shortfall of 25.8 million for revenues in the failure to receive casino revenue in 26-27.
I mean, I think it's important when we talk about gap plans, and we've asked in the past for school district and others to do gap plans, that it's not a question of your budget, it's a question of how do we plan for the future in case of an emergency? How do we work through the process so that we're not doing it either after the fact or we're doing it in rush because we have to get it done. So I think this board's view has always been it is better to start talking about it now when we can think about things, go back and get data, look at other discussions and have those discussions in a time when we don't have to worry about them as opposed to putting people under the gun. So I just want to make sure people realize we're not saying that you didn't do a good job, and I think your budget is trying to do a number of different things. It's trying to re-benchmark the budget into a different way so we can better predict the future. It's trying to deal with a lack of any reserves, and it's trying to figure out how to grow services and other things. Those are three very difficult things. Any one of them would be monumental, and to try to have to do all three of them at once, I think it is a great thing that you're trying to do, and we appreciate all the work that entails. We hope you take our recommendations in the way that they're meant to be taken. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the financial plan. The plan looks different than what we've seen in a number of years, in that there's surpluses estimated in years 2 through 4 in varying amounts. This allows for the rainy day fund to be fully replenished at the end of year 2, which is 2027-28. Property tax levy increases over the 3 out years are included at 9%, 5%, and 5%. The property tax proposed levy increases over the 4 years provide 92.6 million of revenue cumulatively over the 4 years. A 1% decrease in the current year proposed tax levy for 26-27 would be equal to 1.8% reduction in property taxes, compounded to 2 million in year 2, 2.1 million in year 3, 2.2 million in year 4, for a compounding effect of 8.2 million over 4 years for every 1% decrease. All labor contracts are expiring by June 30th. Departmental costs are increasing by 2% annually, beginning in 2027-28. And as we discussed, the salary adjustment of 6.3 million is only in 26-27. The excerpt from this schedule shows or extracts our key findings over the financial plan. It cites the revenues requiring state action, as well as uncertain revenues and cost savings. The revenues total 22.5 million, depending on state action. Uncertain revenues are 34 million, with reductions to health insurance estimated to save 118.5. Due to the uncertainty of these items, our recommendation is for the city to adjust their financial plans for these amounts, or at a minimum, provide support behind the estimates in order for the for BFSA to be able to ascertain the reasonableness of the estimates, and or provide a financial gap plan. If that makes sense. It's kind of understanding you may not want to adjust the financial plan, but let's look at alternatives to fund potential gaps if these didn't come to fruition. Next slide, I've discussed these items, so we can go to the next one. So the total non-recurring revenue included in the financial plan for 27-28 is just under 37 million. It includes the final transfer for the sale of the parking ramps of 7.4 million and a retroactive casino payment of 29.5 million. BFSA supports, So taking all of this into consideration, the BFSA strongly supports the 25% property tax levy increase. A 1% increase has a detrimental effect on the financial plan, and again, we support the 25% property tax increase. Furthermore, we support the 25% increase to the refuse user fee, understanding that the long-term receivable will be repaid over the term of most of it over the term of the financial plan. We also know that continued state support is critical. Miscellaneous financial assistance is providing $30 million this year. Temporary state aid has provided income, and there's deficit borrowing legislation that's been talked about. I still would encourage to have that pursued. It's a great tool to allow the city to smooth out.
If I may, just because we've gone over it several times, this retroactive casino payment of $29.5 million into 1 year. What's your position on that? Do you think that number is correct, or is that?
So that's based on one of the prior catch-up periods, and ultimately, that could occur at any point over the 4-year plan, right? I have no special insight that's gonna occur in the 27-28 fiscal year. Just our belief that we think has been going on for so long, there's gonna be some pressure point where the state and the Senecas are gonna come together. But, it's optimistic, but our concept is that at some point, we're gonna get some sort of good news over the 4-year plan, and this is commensurate with the prior catch-up payment.
Your assumption is that the state's gonna give you the catch-up and that
Sure.
they're not gonna take it back
Yeah,
because they gave you the
Right.
money.
Because they gave us too much money.
Because they gave you the
right?
money in each of those
Right.
years.
See what those terms are,
So,
Yeah.
I think that's just a little different than just saying there's a catch-up, because, I don't know what the implication, I don't know what the state will do. I guess none of us know what the state will do.
But
Will they? Yeah.
So
I didn't follow where the $29.5 million comes from then. Is that,
That was from the catch-up payment, was the year, Jessica? It was the budget last time.
Yeah, maybe it was 2020.
It was Christmas, 2020, okay.
I can't quite remember when it was.
There was,
5 years ago, maybe?
several years ago, there was a dispute. The contract between the Seneca Gaming Commission and New York State was still in effect. Seneca Gaming took a position that, hey, once we hit a certain year, we're no longer required to pay New York State under terms of the contract. So they were compelled legally to put the money into escrow while the dispute was being determined. Now, during that time, the state ceased making casino payments, which included to the city of Buffalo. They advanced a small amount, but for the most part, they withheld it. So when the dispute was settled, those funds were released. It's a little bit different than what we have going on now, which is the city's advancing, and they've been continuing to advance. So I'm a little bit more reluctant to say there's a catch-up. But it would be
because they've been getting payments each year.
Yeah, but there's a question of going back 15 years, whether or not there were additional payments that should be made, whether or not those are rolled into the payments that the state's making now to us, and how.
And the level of pressure from municipalities in the compact area put on the state to negotiate better payments going forward, or,
Yeah.
Does the county get money through that? You don't,
We get a little bit.
Right.
but
We have been getting about $3.5 million annually, so quarterly payments in the 600.
are you expecting a big catch-up?
We haven't budgeted anything for it.
I'm very glad that this catch-up payment is not included in the upcoming budget year.
We-
Otherwise, there would be a substantial, short.
Yeah, the one difference though is we would expect a little bit of a catch-up, because right now the payments have lapsed for 2 full years. Erie County.
Yeah, okay.
So the payments have lapsed for 2 full years. The last payment that was received was for what would be calendar quarter 4, 2023, which was in calendar quarter 1, 2024. So it would be 2 full years that we're behind. So if you extrapolated that out for the county, we would expect maybe a lump sum equitable to like 6 or 7 million. The difference being with the city is they've already gotten in advance on what's been held in escrow of $10.5 million, so
So
that
the county hasn't received anything?
we haven't received anything.
So
the city
that's a
has.
huge difference.
The
Yeah.
29.5 is in addition to the 10.5 the city's already received.
Right.
And for the county, it's so negligible out of the total of our budget, it's basically a rounding error.
Yeah.
We don't rely on it as like, oh, we're waiting for casino payments, because it's so small,
But 30 million is,
it's substantial.
Yeah.
okay.
So
Thank you.
one last question, and I'm sorry. On the vacancy, vacant property, charge, is that active somewhere else in New York State?
No, it was a lobbying push we made for this year. It's been popular in other cities, Detroit, Baltimore.
Also in other states, this is
Yes,
something
but this is,
that-
I'd say, of our lobbying initiatives for this year, aside from the actual cash we got, this is the one that has the strongest support in both houses. It is being carried in the Assembly, it has a companion bill in the Senate, so it's actually, our lobbyists and our Albany folks say it has the best chance of making it through the budget process. And even if it doesn't make it the budget, they're still fairly optimistic it could make it through by the end of session next year. So it's the most, I would say, right now, realistic, plausible piece of all the mayor's
Gotta
legislative
make it through.
initiatives. It's the one that's the most alive.
Okay.
Where are we on the parking ramp sale? What's the final number?
So right now, the underwriter, and this was apparently like a test for who was gonna be a good underwriter, will only underwrite for $46 million, which is the current appraised value of the ramps.
Right.
So they're in place, bond council's in place, underwriter's council's in place. We are also doing a touch-up on the appraisal on the ramps, to see if we can get the number a little bit higher. But we think the sale's gonna come in, right now they're looking again at a 30-year bond on it, now not the 20, back to the 30. We do have to defease, but we're on schedule to get these things sold by the end of June. We do think it could come in closer to the $51 million area. We also prospectively are going to adopt a resolution as the parking authority to implement a 7% rate increase. There's some deviations on that, but roughly 7% rate increase for the 4 ramps ahead of the sale, so that the investors will have the certainty of the higher revenue. While also guaranteeing us the $2 million we have in this as the annual receipts. Originally, the plan was for that to be at 1.6. We wanted to try to push up a little higher, so we at least keep some higher chunk of recurring revenue out of the authority.
How
So you
does the
say-
46, I'm sorry, how does the 46 go to 51, did you say?
So 46 is all the underwrite for because that's what they were appraised at. But the bond sale is not gonna be based on the appraisal value of the actual physical asset, it's based on future year revenue, right?
Okay.
And so our,
So that's where we're
our
trying to
underwriter,
make it
Ramirez
inclusive.
advisors, they believe that based on their analysis of the revenue, with that 7% rate increase, and then assuming some modest increases over the course of the 30 years of the debt service, that they could achieve the higher
So
figure.
you've included 49 in the 3-year plan,
But it might
somewhere
punch a little
between
bit
the
higher.
46 and the 51.
Ben, how was the financial advisor and the bond counsel designated? How were they, was there an RFP?
It was RFP for both, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, you say
And who are they? I'm sorry.
Ramirez is the financial Ramirez is the underwriter. The financial advisor is Masterson Advisors, who work with the county, and bond counsel is Barclay Damon, who was brought in on the initial structure of the deal under the prior administration. So they have most familiarity with it.
So 51 is the anticipated proceeds of the city?
Proceeds.
Not the full sale. What's the full sale when you include all of the costs that would be included, because they're not gonna do a full sale based on a $46 million asset.
Underwriter's costs. I'll close it. I have the thing from Ramirez I can show you. They were a little bit, it was updated, so it is higher, but didn't break out for me. Okay.
I just ask if you could provide that to the BFSAs.
Sure, yeah, I think, Brian, you might have been in that packet, did you get all the underwriter RFP responses?
I did, I haven't made it through all.
Okay,
So,
yeah, okay.
Alex provided
Okay,
whatever.
oh, okay, great.
When is it pricing? When would it be going to market?
It's gonna be fairly late in the year, but where the sale concludes on like the 26th or 27th, the current timetable.
Late in your fiscal year,
Our fiscal year, yes.
or not late in the actual calendar year?
No, not our fiscal year.
So, but you will make presumably the money that you have in so that you can actually make this budget.
In the current fiscal year.
That was, it was made clear that it was imperative to everyone. Even the appraisal update is only gonna take 2 weeks, so we authorized that 2 days ago, so.
And you said you're bumping up rate?
7%. For the most part, B-Car is under most of the competing lots.
Okay.
And I also want to do a little bit of a restructuring on, there's wait list of all the ramps for monthly spots.
Oh,
Kind of lengthy, actually. So reshuffle some of the daily spots into monthly, because I think that's a better recurring revenue for us.
Did the
so we are
finance,
seeing,
oh, I'm sorry.
so we are seeing folks back in offices and.
It's ticking up. I mean, I don't think daily does not sell out very often, like the way daily used to sell out all the time, is my understanding from the data from San Branchi, but that is not happening.
Did the financial advisor kind of give you an idea as to what rating agencies they would go to in order to rate these bonds?
Yes, I believe the Ramirez strategy actually is to seek a single rating. They think S&P would be the best for this transaction, and they expect an A.
Jeanette?
Okay, I just have a few minor comments left, other areas of significance that we noted. Recently, there was the ruling that came out of the bond dispute, and whether there's an outstanding question whether or not that will continue to be disputed, or if bonds will be sold. There's questions about the police and fire recruitment due to the timing of testing and all that goes around bringing recruits in that we spoke about. All this we've spoke about, the only one we haven't is, and I want to bring to your attention is, well, there's two of them. One is the repayment of the outstanding loan from refuse to the general fund. This isn't going to be something that we see budgeted as a revenue. It's a balance sheet only transaction, but it's an opportunity for a reclassification out of restricted non-spendable fund balance to available fund balance. So that's an opportunity to release those funds to the city to use for other purposes. The second comment is referencing the GFOA. They set the standards for a lot of the guidance that we utilize, everybody utilizes. They recommend no less than 2 months of operating expenditures. We agree with that for a city the size of the city of Buffalo. That would be equivalent to, for unrestricted fund balance, that would be equivalent to 98.4 million. If you look at prior year actuals, to 108.5 million if you look at current year proposed budget. That could vary depending on what you consider operating expenditures. This is just a rough idea. Regardless, the balance is 42.3 million at the beginning of the year. So the Ryan administration walked into a very challenging situation in that there really are no reserves available for hiccups, which inevitably happen. So it's just something certainly will continue with your support and work on monitoring expenses and revenues during the year. So thank you.
I guess one question I have is that we know from the federal government that there are large Medicaid cuts coming down to the state. And given that the state's budget is about 45% Medicaid, I guess the question becomes, how do we account for that I mean, we've kept AIM flat. Given that maybe they can use the rainy day fund for a year, but the other out years, seems to me, at least for one, it's gonna take a number of years before, even if they try to reverse it, that they would be able to reverse it. I mean, that could be very damaging, not just to the city of Buffalo, but to all municipalities and counties as we go on. And then we have the other cuts that I'd be interested to see what you're thinking about. And I wish the superintendent were still here, but it's the Department of Education cuts to K through 12 through Title III and Title I funding and the impacts that could have on the city. I guess I'd just like to hear your thoughts on what you're doing or what you're thinking.
So, I mean, I think we're all, probably these guys more than anybody, waiting to see how the state implements Big Beautiful Bill, right?
Yeah.
And how that gets passed down to the local districts
Yeah.
that actually administer Medicaid. And because remember, the cuts are not direct cuts, it's a scheme to basically create very onerous
Right.
requirements for recertification that will be monsters for local, for DSS to implement, right? The 2 recerts per year plus the 2 recerts per year for SNAP, right? So I guess we're all waiting with dire breath to see how the state rolls out those policies in the coming months. The 5 million in enhanced aim has been consistent for a while now, and we included that again based on discussions with Brown Weinrau and Sarah Lesser, are all the liaison, basically saying, at this point, it's been going on for so long, and all the other municipalities are like becoming reliant on it. They say even in a dire situation, they see the state keeping that out because it's become like a new default effectively. It's been going on for so long, so that's why we included that. But we don't expect, like you saw, I don't have another 10 million next year or any other big windfall from Albany in there. I don't expect it, and I'm focusing on policy wins from Albany, right, not direct cash. On the school district thing, when we're going over this chart on the cash reserves, as a county executive, this is our concern, right? Because for those 6 months of the year, when we're relying on their cash, as this goes down, I'd love to see an analysis actually on the cash flow. When we get to that 27, 28 year, how bad is their cash situation that in those 6 months that we're relying on it, that it's gonna get tight? Or it's start doing rands or something, I don't know, but.
Even just looking at your budget and then comparing that, it looks like we're pretty close to, busting out. I mean, there won't be any cash in some of those months. We'll either have to figure out.
And that's why for us,
Short-term
the
borrowing.
levy increase is such a critical area, it's, over the course of the year, it's not a lot, but it's at least an additional chunk of cash coming into those 2 payment rounds, right, so.
Yeah. Well, it looks like there's a 3 to 4 month period that we're really gonna be in trouble that we haven't seen in a long time. And we're not even talking about what happens to negotiate contracts both in the schools and on your side to what any of that might do.
And then we might get to a point where when we have to do the pension prepayment to not pay the penalty, we have to do a grant for that or something like that. But it's a discussion in the outcoming years, but this is obviously very concerning on the cash front.
And so has the city talked about any impact of preparing for Tier 6 type of reform? All right, I'll leave it alone.
I can say from the county where it's very difficult to determine, though on the county level, every county is concerned because it could be during the middle of our budget year a fairly substantial addition, because we have to make up for the loss of those years to basically make these individuals whole, and they're not going to make the employees pay for it, they're going to make the municipalities. Last I heard, they were going to exclude New York City because it was too big in the financial issues that were happening there, but they were planning on including all of the counties and the municipalities in upstate, including the city of Buffalo. So it's possible that the city could be hit with a mid-year adjustment of $15, $20 million.
There are 2 parts to fix Tier 6, so it'll be interesting to see. There's the catch-up money and the funding for the contributions, but there's also the moving to 55. And so if they split the baby and did 55, that's not gonna have an impact on any of us for a while because people aren't. But the school district, this is gonna be critical to the school. This could really change the school district. And what I'm worried about the 55 part is, well, it's presumably, you think of the kindergarten teacher having to get up and get down at 65 is probably not the best thing in the world. But we already have a huge shortage of teachers. How do you backfill the retirements that these people have earned? I'm not trying to say anything about that, but it doesn't seem like we have a plan going forward, particularly in education, to look at all of that. But I think that maybe is something that could really screw up everything that we're doing here.
I think a good chunk of your workforce is Tier 6 now?
Yeah, it will have an impact on all municipalities, because the vast majority of municipalities' workforces are at least Tier 4, but Tier 5 and 6. everyone is very concerned because there's a lot of push for fixed tier 6, but there's not comments coming about the actual impact it'll have on every municipality, every school district, where it's forced in. And you could push the retirement age to a later date, and that does help a little bit, but there still would be some sort of chunk of change that every government would have to come up with in that first year to make up for the lost years of, what was it, at this point, 10 years?
They're gonna increase to
It could literally be $30 million
65%?
for the county.
Say again?
It could literally be like a one-time $30 million retro for the county.
That's gonna increase the 65% fringe benefit rate?
Probably.
Yeah. Right.
Just for
Yeah.
our reference, directors, on page 32 of the report, it is only police and fire, but I have the employees broken down by tier. And you can see tier 5 and 6 for both police and fire, about 3-to-1 ratio compared to tiers 1 and 2. I could do a similar chart for ERS.
Yeah, no,
It's probably, in the future, something we should just try to track, and particularly for the education folks, because that's gonna be a much bigger number.
Go ahead.
I was trying to follow the rules that we weren't going to ask any
No.
questions till the end of the presentation.
It is the,
but that-
it
that
is
didn't
the
last
end.
long. So it is the end. I just want to say to both of you that I appreciate the challenge you had with a $109 million gap. And I recognize the need for and support your efforts to increase your revenue base. And you've done that through property tax levy, you've done that with better collection, better enforcement. And I also appreciate the need to reinvest in the city. So the increases that we see in capital outlay and equipment and software, I see the need for all of those things. The kind of third piece of budgeting, though, in my mind, is any cost reductions. Because there's a lot of increased fees, and we're increasing services, that's good. Can you just give us some background on, as you're going through the budget process, what types of things? And I'll just throw out for an example, I've been hearing over years, you know, maybe the city should have every other week recycling, or once a year bulk garbage, whatever. Those kind of things, did you think of, or the vacant jobs, or any cost reductions that
I I
we
think
talk
that
about?
the mayor felt very strong.
Or maybe future ones?
Yeah, the mayor felt, and I did give him some options on that type, the mayor felt very strongly that if the city was going along with this large of a levy increase, he wanted to make sure services improve rights of folks along with their higher taxes saw improved services. And so to that end, you know, he did not direct us to go in an austerity direction. So obviously with your resolution, we'll come up with a plan that is gonna be ultimately, for the most part, a cut package, right? So we'll have those levers on the table if need be, but his hope was, again, to be able to get into a structurally balanced budget without implementing, you know, what he would call an austerity mindset.
Sometimes there's cuts that can be made that don't.
And there's in a few areas where we felt like, our initial reorg resolution, for instance, deleted several positions for things that we felt were like fairly duplicitous, like boards that had an executive director and a secretary that met like twice a year, or, you know, frankly, the county does a great job running the Buffalo Training Center. We don't need a 6-figure staffer over there, you know, not doing anything. You know, they do a great job with that. Let's do like things like that. And I'm very interested in anywhere we can find shared services, things like that. Those are all areas of keen interest to us.
Mark?
I want to commend the mayor and his team for coming up with a realistic budget. We've been talking about this on the fiscal authority for a number of years. And it is it's a tough budget, but it's a realistic budget. There's one area of concern it's not so much about this year, it's about those out years. We always know the out years can change, but because of that casino payment expected in year 2, as well as a projected another 9% increase on top of that, if the casino payment didn't come, we'd be looking at a substantial shortfall once again. So I do commend you. I think it's a realistic budget, first one we've seen in a long time. I agree with Director Keenan, we need to invest in our city. As I said during my State of the County, we can't have a city government that's being held together by duct tape and Band-Aids, and this does go a long way to address that. But as is often the case, it's the things that are in the future that you kind of like, oh, we'll worry about it then, and then they come up they can bite you. So I just hope that as it's being considered that, because I know there's going to be be some recommendations from the board that those be considered as well.
And I will note on the casino catch-up payment, that's the year with our largest, surplus, right? So a lot of it's baked into a hopeful ability to replenish fund balance as opposed to relying on it massively to balance the budget for that year, so.
Andy, did you?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Go
On a
ahead.
more specific issue, this 5,502,000.
Yes, so I saw your email, things with the council are incredibly delicate right now, and so I would ask that the original language be kept to give us until July 31st while we work through things right now.
But I don't see how you can keep that information from the council if it's, basically, it's a
Well, no,
mistake in the budget,
This
right?
will all be filed with them, right, they'll be aware of all this, right, but there's a few different areas that we're still looking at for options here, including, I see Nadine's here, who I think helped invent the whole item with the DPW campus. There's essentially a notion to securitize the brownfield tax credits so that the money can become upfront rather than the actual, it takes many years to get brownfield credits. Is that, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, does it sound right? Basically, yes.
It's
Yeah.
a tax credit
Yeah.
that you can, much like low-income housing tax credits, you sell to an investor and they pay you a portion upfront rather than 100% value upon full completion.
So because the money for this is for the DPW campus, that's one option for if in the next fiscal year that transaction occurs, we could use that as an offset on expenses for this item here. We'll play around with a few things, but we would just ask for some more time. while
But
we
right
work through
now,
it.
your budget includes, that the council is considering,
Mhm.
a $5.5 million revenue that, for
Goes
lack of
to-
a better description, was a mistake in the budget. It should not be a revenue, it's not going to be a revenue.
It
And
is
you
gonna
know
show
that
as revenue,
now,
though.
while the
But
council's,
It is gonna show as revenue.
I'm sorry?
It is gonna show as revenue.
It's a what?
It is going to show as revenue in the it is going to show it in general fund as revenue. It will end the year as a revenue item.
In
general
26,
fund.
27?
Yes.
Well, that's not what staff is telling us.
They don't believe that it should be counted towards the budget, to balance the budget, because they believe it should stay with restricted capital, which is not a requirement. That is the BFSA's opinion.
Well, it's not our opinion. We reached out to the city controller's office, who indicated that it would be required to go back into restricted fund balance.
At the end of the 26-27 fiscal year.
I don't know the mechanics
Okay.
behind the debits and the
Yeah.
credits, but
Delano's here.
Okay. So at that next fiscal year. So again, I would just, for the purposes of the resolution for now, I would just ask that the current language be kept. We totally understand the note, and we'll be working through that with you folks, but just give us a little time to go through options, if that's okay. That's my request.
I would argue to leave it out because it's immaterial. It's 0.8% of the whole budget. If there's other things in the budget you could have the same opinion about, that it just was a line item that was very obvious, so.
No, I don't think $5.5 million is immaterial. Given the size of the budget or not, it's a big item. We're looking at things at 200,000, 300,000, and we're saying adjustments should be made. So if there's a $5.5 million revenue item being estimated that's not going to be realized, that's the question, is it going to be realized or not? But if we know now that it's not, then the council should have the right to act on the budget knowing what the revenues are. And unless that is accompanied by a substitute revenue, perhaps sales tax, which we said was under budgeted, or a cut in the appropriations, then by definition, the tax levy is the balancer, and it would be added to the tax levy. So I don't think it's something that we should ignore. If what staff told us is that it's not going to be realized and it's a zero number, then I think it should be submitted to the council now as an amendment, before they finalize the budget. Now, if you're telling me, that it is going to be and that you wouldn't change the estimate, that's a different story.
it very well could be a revenue. So I don't wanna get hung up on if it's a revenue or not. The revenue is restricted, and because it can only be used for external restrictions as imposed by the grantor, the giver, the person that provides that money, it's not available for operations. It can't be used for fire salaries, police salary, like, can't be used for operations,
So if anything, we'd have to have an
regardless,
offsetting appropriation.
or a revenue, another revenue
Which is not in there.
source. Exactly, exactly.
So it's a hole in the budget,
Either way you look at it, whether it's revenue or not, it's a
Would you
hole
agree
in
with
the
that?
budget.
Commissioner? That it's a hole in the
I
budget?
think at the end, it's gonna show as a general fund revenue, so I don't, the logic there, it's not there for me. It's not like you're gonna see it come out of the general fund at some point. It'll sit there as a revenue and close the year as a revenue when it's received. The fund balance is reallocated with a journal entry just among fund balance.
Right, well, this year you're gonna actually have an expense for the 5.5 million.
Correct, that's showing
That's
the
going to
general
increase,
expense.
that's gonna increase your deficit from 24.5 to 30 million. Now, when we talk about your operating deficit, we ignore the 5.5 million because it came out of restricted fund balance. This 5.5 million that you're getting is going back in restricted fund balance.
But on the financial statement, I'm just trying to say that it'll show both ways. It'll show the deficit getting added in this year. It'll show the revenue being added in next year. It's, I have the comptroller report, he didn't mention it in here, or she didn't mention it. Is it in here, do they know?
No, we anticipated that it would come up.
Well, I don't think
Well,
we're gonna settle this here. I mean, this
Could
is,
you just answer
this,
real quick?
go ahead.
I'm sorry. What did
I
you
mean,
say?
based on what we see, we anticipated the expense and the revenue, everything will come in 27, but if it's not allowable to look at for operations and it don't, then I agree, we agree with what we discussed with the BFSA.
So why didn't you put it in the report?
So
Just
it
wondering.
wasn't one of the top items I looked at, we had other items we had concerns about.
I mean, we're not gonna solve this here.
Well, wait a
At
minute,
this-
should the council be notified, or is that question been answered about what your concerns are, Tom?
I think that
I don't know if I meant
they
to.
should be aware of it before they adopt the budget. I don't think, you know,
Well, in a strange way, they are being notified as soon as they listen to our discussion here today.
but prior
They will understand
budgets have
what
been
the issue is.
criticized
Right,
for having fake numbers as revenue estimates.
right.
And, you know, we don't wanna fall into that trap. If this is a number that's not going to be realized, then it shouldn't be included as a revenue estimate.
But I think that the issue is one step behind that, which is there's an argument over whether it is a revenue item or whether it is a reserve requirement replenishment, which gets into the weeds of accounting.
Yes, yes, it's
Uh,
largely an accounting question.
It's an accounting question at this point. Should the council understand that this is here, I would hope that they're watching us right now and understand that, yes, this is, this is something that you need to think about. But that doesn't mean that when the time comes and the ruling's made, that one of these two things is gonna have to happen. Either there's gonna have to be an adjustment to the budget or not. But right now, we don't know what that is.
Well, and we
Right.
also look at it, that's the purpose of having a BFSA. The controller don't identify, that's the purpose of having BFSA in play, to identify items that we might not see or we might not touch. So I think the council should be made aware of it, whether we put it in our report or not.
Is the administration agreeable to submitting it to the council?
Oh, no, I think you, do you guys file all your
At any time.
reports typically?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be
Yeah.
filed, yeah, yeah. And I have no problem with that. We just don't have to act on it right now. I'd like having till July 31st to give us, because we can always do a budget amendment
Yeah.
in July, right? So I just like having that flexibility.
And I just wanna clarify, we submit the material to them.
Yep.
We don't necessarily put it in the journal.
Got it.
File it,
Okay.
but common council gets copies of all our
Everything,
material.
all of
yes,
ours.
yeah, that's what I thought, Tom, yeah.
Is that okay, or do you want something more?
I will still make the motion that it should be submitted as an amendment while the council is deliberating on the budget.
Okay.
And I would offer that as an amendment to our resolution.
Is there a second?
So, just say that again, Tom.
I would offer an amendment to require that the revision to the budget be submitted to the council while they're deliberating on the budget before their deadline is met,
Which is not July, it's,
May 20 something.
So he's saying, hey, can we wait till July?
right.
And
Which would be too late for the council to
For the
take any
council.
action
On the current budget, other than to adjust it.
on the budget that's about to be adopted. They're in the process now of adopting a budget, they should
Right.
have all the information that's out there available to them.
And so the
Not
communication.
adopt a budget and then in July, find out about it, but not be able to take any corrective action.
So on, I guess, I don't know for
Right, no.
Robert's rules of order, but on the question, it's.
The question is whether or not there's a second.
So
Well,
it's the
it-
method.
What's the resolutions?
We have a resolution that is a proposed resolution that is in our packet.
Right.
I believe Tom is making a motion to amend it.
Right.
The resolution has not been proposed.
It's not
yet,
before us.
to even
Yeah.
consider.
Yes.
Okay.
It's on our agenda.
It's on our agenda,
It's in
so
our paper.
We haven't
we
got-
can bring it up when we get to the resolution. Is that okay, Tom?
And so, I mean, so while,
Go ahead.
while we're here, it's, I think the piece is the mode of communication to the common council. Basic, because we said
Right.
they're getting the information through the package that we deliver from here. Yes, that's what we're saying, but you're saying, hey, I want it spelled out.
As an amendment to the budget that the mayor has submitted, because it appears that there is a $5.5 million
Yeah,
hole in the
okay.
budget, and council should have time to act on it by either, it could be submitted along with another amendment, and that would be to increase another revenue source,
To close.
a realistic one, one that is expected to materialize, or they could submit it with appropriation cuts to offset it, or they could submit it just as it is, which would then result in either an increase to the property tax levy of about another 3%, or the council could make $5.5 million in cuts so that the tax levy stays the same as it's currently been proposed. But they should have that flexibility to know what they're going to do, rather than adopt a budget that, my understanding, has a $5.5 million hole.
Thank you.
All right,
Unfortunately, I have to step out, because I actually have to go to a meeting, but
thank you.
Dr. Cornell will still be here, so thank you, everyone.
Okay. Any more questions, discussions on the city budget? Okay. We're gonna do the resolutions at the end, just for everybody to know when we get through all of the covered agencies. We'll now review the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency's 2026-2027 proposed budget and related four-year financial plan. The BFSA staff report on this item is included under tab 4 of your board book. Bryce, you're still up.
Thank you. First slide we have here is the year 52 entitlement funds. City of Buffalo did receive the allocation letter mid-April. Year to year, that's an approximate increase of $184,000 with increases under the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Programs, and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. Those three areas have increased, whereas Emergency Solutions grants are decreasing by approximately $9 million. Bulk of these funds, the majority of the funds will be handled by Vera. There is a small piece still being maintained by the City of Buffalo, and that's more in regards to some of the public works and parks work that they do with those funds. Now, just to clarify, this is the award amount per year and not the budget amount. Bureau uses prior year dollars to really fund their operations annually. So year to year, total program grant income is decreasing by almost $793,000, or 2.8%. Program costs are decreasing by $1.1 million, 4.6%. The total admin and planning costs are budgeted to increase $308,000. So the total expenditures are decreasing from $28.3 million in the current fiscal year to $27.5 million in the next fiscal year. So over the 4 years, you can see the grant income going from $27.5 million down to $20 million. And over the 4 years, what this is reflecting is really the utilization and spend down of one-time funds, including the city ARPA, the Affordable Housing Advance Fund, the home ARPA dollars, the vacant rental property, and the accessory dwelling unit. Those are both new programs through the state. So those dollars are really in the 26, 27, 27, 28, and then they're fully expended and drop out of the budget grant revenues in the last 2 years. So on the expenditure side, you'll see CDBG and home grants being the largest amount. That home ARPA, they have until, I believe it was September of 2030 to spend that down. So City of Buffalo the last couple of years has received a couple of different allotments from the federal government between CARES Act, which is CDBCD, the home ARPA, which is through HUD, and then a portion of the city's ARPA dollars, approximately $1.5 million for the housing fund. So these are all the one-time pieces in the Bureau budget that you're going to see expended over the next 2 years. So there you see the expenditures going from 23 million down to 15.5 million by year for the financial plan, and total admin and planning costs are pretty static at 4.5, 4.4 million over that time. So included in the budget, the CDD budget of 10.2 million, 7.6 million of that's for program delivery, 2.6 million is for admin and planning, and within that 7.6 million, the major categories are 2.5 million for the emergency loan program, 2.4 million for program delivery costs, 1.8 million for crime prevention, youth and senior programming, and then a combined 900,000 for demolitions and other economic development activities in the city. The home budget is budgeted at 4.6 million in the 26-27 budget, 4.3 million for direct grant costs, 300,000 for admin and planning. Larger portion is at 4.2 million for rehabilitation and new construction. So it's home rehabilitation investments in neighborhoods. Home ARPA HUD funds, those are one of those one-time, even though it's going on about 5 years now, will be going on for over 5 years. They received 12.3 million awarded. It's administered through HUD. It's separate from the ARPA treasury funds that we are used to speaking about. Under this program, there's 4 targeted investment areas: production and preservation of affordable housing, tenant-based rental assistance, homeless prevention services and supportive services, purchase and development of non-congregate shelters. Obligation deadline was September 30th, 2025, which was met. They have a disbursement deadline of September 30th, 2030. As of December 31st, they had a balance of 8.7 million to disperse. These ARPA funds, the 1.5 million that the Bureau has here, are a portion of what the city received that was over the 331 million. So the obligation has been met by the December 31, 2024. They have a deadline to disperse by December 31, 2026. So 7 months to go. Balance to go is 1.2 million, and it's targeted in production of new affordable housing, improvements to existing housing, and transitional housing.
Bryce, do we think they're gonna make it?
I believe so. I think there was a recent disbursement under this piece, a couple $100,000. So they appear to be on track. That's one thing we run into at Bureau. Their cash flow, it really ebbs and flows. They might target something for the second and third quarter, and then all is paid out in the fourth quarter. So I'll have a better sense of where they are at our June meeting after I review the quarterly, and I'll circle back on some
Do
information.
they have enough staff to do this?
That's a question we'd have to take back to Bureau Management, or potentially somebody that's on their board. Ben, you're not a member of the, okay.
No, Thompson has that one.
Okay.
We are having the executive director of Bureau, she's been invited to the June meeting.
Okay, great. I just hate to give money back.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
They're trying to make sure it's dispersed for the right purpose. Okay, CARES Act. This one, this is the funds that were received right before the large ARPA amounts were dispersed. This is administered through the Treasury Department. Balance of 1.2 million left to disperse as of December 31st. And that's another one at the June meeting, I can give you updated spend down of where they're at on that. It was my understanding there were some large expenditures, March, April, we just received the quarterlies and I haven't really had a chance to review them and see where they are to date. Components of the non-federal budget, which total $988,621. Largest component is the general fund. That's $932,000 in fiscal year 27. Increases to $961,000 in fiscal year 28, $989,000 in fiscal year 29, and then $1 million in fiscal year 2030. All this revenue is allocated for administrative and planning costs. There's still the Cities Rise program. They have the remaining balance budgeted over the next 2 years. And then the Evans Fund is really an annual revolving fund for closing costs, home buyer education programs. So that's budgeted at $6,000 annually. This slide here, just a quick snapshot of the amount of those different funds we talked about, CDBG, home, ESG, the percentage of that they're allocated under that annual grant, how much of it can go to admin and planning costs. So that's why the earlier slide, I said this is year 52 only, it's not what's budgeted. These percentages are applied to that to determine how much over the 4 to 5 years they use to spend this down can be used for admin costs. Budgeted positions currently, they are in the plan, they have 40, 11 are exempt employees. As of 3/31, they had 9 vacancies. So if you want to look at it beginning July 1st, they don't fill it.
Which goes to the question of do they have enough staff?
The current CBA expires at June 30th, 2026. Their assumptions for the financial plan include a 3% estimate increase in fiscal year 27, and then 2% increases in out years. Under the current CBA, they did include a bonus system, and so going forward, those bonuses are assumed at the prior year rate. No change there.
Bryce, they only have one union?
Correct.
Okay,
CSE 815.
okay.
So the budget is not developed based on annual award, but on what project managers intend to use. So taking a step back, looking at the current 25-26, in some ways that $28 million adopted budget, in my mind, was over budgeted by $3 million, because the original intent was all the CDBG funds were gonna go to the Bureau, but the city still held back about $3 million for the public works, so it artificially increased it this year. And they don't do a real mid-year adjustment, because as long as expenditures don't exceed what the grant amounts are, they're fine. They're not gonna adjust the grants downward, or they haven't historically. So the 27-2030 financial plan is balanced, conservatively budgeted, reasonable underlying assumptions, and it appropriately reflects the available CARES funding and additional ARPA funds from the city. We have mentioned that there are concerns with the timing. I'll have a better update on that at the June meeting to see where they're at after the latest disbursements.
Thank you. Jack, do you have anything to add?
The Bureau budget is very straightforward. They can only spend up to what they're awarded through grants. I echo your concerns, however, that they're not, they've carried vacancies for so many years, and it seems like the money's not going out the door. So I'd like to see what she has to say about that.
I mean, it's actually twofold. Is by having vacancies, then you don't have people who want to have the history and understand how to do the work. And therefore, it's actually a two-stage problem, because there's nobody there to train people to make sure that they can get it done right. So I think this becomes
becomes something we need to talk about and should.
Any other questions? Okay. If not, we'll move on to a final review today of the 2026-2027 budget and related four-year financial plan of the municipal, Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority.
BFSA's review of the BMHA's adopted budget and adopted financial plan. Before I go further, I do want to mention that we have representatives from the BMHA here as well.
Can I sit?
Yeah,
That's take out the name.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting so long.
No,
Hopefully it was informative.
interesting.
I'm Nadine Marrero. I'm an Assistant Executive Director with the BMHA.
I'm Christine McMillan. I'm an Acting Principal Accountant in the Finance Department of BMHA.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to say before Nathan goes into his analysis?
No, this is my first one, so I will listen more than I speak, hopefully.
Nadine's
you,
been very
Nathan.
helpful, going through this new process after Vanessa left. It's very, very helpful, so. We'll start with the introduction here, just to explain what the BMHA budget and financial plan is. It's really four individual budget components, and we look at it on both a cumulative basis, then we look at each individual one. So the cumulative budget and financial plan includes the 22 asset management project budgets, that's the AMP, the central office cost center, COCC, Marine Drive, and then finally the HUD Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is Section 8. They're all unique, so looking at them individually and cumulatively is interesting. First, the consolidated financial plan. I'll note that the 26-27 adopted budget is balanced. There's $1.8 million in net operating income, and when you remove debt service and remove the OPEB accrual, which is non-cash, there's a $600,000 cash inflow overall. And cumulatively over the 4 years, again, it's they're both balanced, $8.4 million in net operating income, and then with the adjustments, it's a $3.6 million cumulative cash inflow. Adopted budget, well, first we'll look at the adopted budget as compared to the prior fiscal year, or rather the current fiscal year, the 25-26 budget, and then the financial plan. So the adopted budget substantially increases estimated revenues overall by $4.5 million or 7.7% as compared to the 25-26 budget. It's primarily driven by federal funding through HUD, the operating subsidy for the AMPS, and the PHA grants vouchers, Section 8. Revenues are estimated to increase $3.1 million or about just under 5% over the financial plan. What's driving that is anywhere from a 2 to a 2.2% average annual increase for the operating subsidy for rental income and then the PHA grants. And this table just shows where we were in the adopted budget for 25-26, the percentage change, the dollar changes, and lays out what I just explained. Moving along to expenses. Expenses are budgeted to increase $4.1 million or 7.2% in 26-27 as compared to the adopted budget. That's a lower rate of increase than the revenue increase. And we started at a point where revenues were higher than expenses, so there's no deficit there. Maintenance expenses go up considerably, $2.2 million or 16%. Conversely, administrative costs are budgeted lower at $1.2 million or a 9.4% decrease. Utilities are up quite a bit, 26.2%. Anyone that's looked at their utility bills knows knows the answer to that one. All other expenses are up considerably too by about $1.8 million or 19.1%. Other expenses include the voucher grants. Well, that's tied into the revenue coming into the Section 8 and then also going out from Section 8. It's a pass-through.
Can I ask real quick on the maintenance expense?
Yep.
increase? What does that What does that involve?
I can address it, and I think
It's
maybe
later
Nate
on
might have a
slide, or-
comment about it as well.
So our maintenance expenses are expenses to maintain our properties, so repairs to tenant units, cutting grass, plowing snow, changing light bulbs, fixing bathrooms, anything that is the day-to-day living experience of our residents.
And the 16.2% increase, is that, what part of that is the cost of doing business has increased versus allocating more money towards the, do we know that, or?
Yeah, so what's going on with maintenance is that there's additional, basically what BMHA did was reduce administrative costs, budgeted administrative costs by
Right.
removing positions, and then they put that money into maintenance.
Okay,
It
so
was
it's
our-
an increase, it's an actual.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll have a little bit more explanation for that later, but, there's contracted services that are added for maintenance to do
Yeah.
unit turnover,
Yeah,
and then, regular capital asset management are doing the regular work orders and emergency orders.
yeah, because obviously there's been a lot of discussion about
Right.
work orders and that type of stuff, and so I was looking to see, is this 16.2% increase, will that address a lot of that stuff, or what is that?
So that is intended to be both, there is an increased cost of doing business of, some percentage, but 16.2% increase is larger than that inflationary cost, so we're hoping to invest more directly into that work.
Nadine, obviously over the past several months, there has been a lot of publicity relative to lack of heat or water leaks or, what do you attribute the lack of maybe service to try to resolve a lot of these problems that have generated so much publicity for, tenants that, have to wait a long time to have certain items fixed? Is it lack of staff to help address these problems, or is it the inability to hire outside contractors to try to resolve these issues, or?
So I first want to address, so BMHA has a 24-hour turnaround on emergencies. So once we are notified by a tenant, whether it be heat or something, we have 24 hours to address that. So as soon as we're notified, we do have that requirement. So I would say that if there are people saying they have heat for more than 24 hours, I would question when the BMHA was notified about that. So we do have that. So our other work orders do deprioritize beyond emergency, because that is what we have to.
So I'm sorry, and you just touched on emergency, so it would be like heat, water type stuff? would
Heat,
be
water
emergency
leaks, things
type.
that would damage the units. I don't have the full list.
Health and safety.
Health and safety, broken glass,
Okay.
things of that nature where people or the property could be
And
hurt
so
from that.
the immediate emergency health and safety type stuff, you guys have been addressing?
Those are 24 hours. We have staff that are on call 365 days a year. So we always have an assistant super who is our most qualified maintenance at minimum on call at all times. They show up all hours of the day or night. They will go to a property to address any emergency. And we have a 24-hour work call line for anyone who has an emergency as well. So there's always someone to answer the phone, and there's always someone to show up in an apartment.
So you do most of the work in-house, you're saying?
We do a lot of the work in-house. I would say that we have been having a hard
I'm
time
sorry.
recruiting, in particular, qualified plumbers, glazed tradesmen. Much like I'm sure the city of Buffalo has, some of those wage rates are just much lower than what's competitive in the market. So glazer, plumber, electrician, what's the other one? There's one other trade I can't remember off the top of my head. We have had those vacancies. We keep trying to recruit. We're generally unsuccessful. Locksmith. We have recruited a locksmith, thankfully. So we have that trade, but plumber, electrician, and glazers. Maybe we got a glazer, I can't remember. But we keep trying to fill them, they show up for a few months and then they turn over. The starting salaries are in the 50s. That is not competitive for a plumber, for an electrician in today's market. And so I think that has hindered some of our ability to do some of that more complicated work in-house, which does require us to outsource it because we have federal procurement rules and state procurement rules. We have to follow that procurement process of, not everything is emergency. It has to go through the bidding. It has to be solicited. Vendors have to be done. A PO has to be issued. So all of that does take more time. But I do think that the wage schedule for those trades does hinder some of our ability to do some of that work in-house.
So I promise last question on this.
Go ahead.
I saw you open your mouth. And so with that procurement, you can't have like a vendor or vendors on call do a procurement like that to have them at the ready? Or-
We do have some, so we have a plumbing and we have heating and cooling. But at times like our heating and cooling guys, we expended that contract this year. So we have a cost maximum that we get approved by our board. I don't remember the cost maximum for this one, but say it was $500,000. Once we hit that $500,000, we can no longer use that contract to call that. And our vendors
Right.
are no longer holding that cost either. So now we have to go back and do the POs. So every year we try to project what we will need in those trades that year.
So is it the
into a
age of
contract.
the property or what?
Yes, our
what-
properties are quite old. I
So,
believe we have
okay.
the oldest public housing stock in the state of New York.
Thank you.
All right, so Nadine, when you see this publicity on TV stations where they're interviewing tenants about how they have not, there's been no response to their emergencies, how do you guys respond to that? Is it because they haven't got anything in 24 hours, or are they manufacturing a lot of this stuff? As far as you guys not reacting or responding in appropriate time frame? I mean, you guys see it, so I.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, right? So, for instance, there are some tenants who won't let us enter the unit unless they're home. So our staff will go there 3 times and knock on the door, once in the morning, once in the early afternoon, once in the late afternoon. If there's no one there to let them in, we can't do that work order and complete that work. That tenant is now frustrated, nobody will complete that work, but we have other houses we have to knock on and complete that work. So now that work order is going towards the bottom of the list, and we're working on those tenants who will let them in. Some of it is that frustration of lack of understanding. We did recently just complete, it's called Meet the Managers, and it's really Meet the entire BMHA, where myself and the other assistant executive director and our capital improvements director, our director of technical operations, our director of management, the housing manager, the housing aides, the assistant super, went to 18 of our 24 developments and met with tenants who were there. And we talked through problems like the door to the community room doesn't work, the heat in my unit is too high, we need additional security, and we've had outcomes from all of those meetings. Like at Stuyvesant, our CPO who was there was wonderful, CPO Anderson, offered to have monthly security meetings with the tenants there to help address those concerns and see if we could do that. So while we do understand that there is frustration from the public, we continue to go to our residents and try to knock down those misunderstandings, explain how we can all work better together.
And road and abatement is?
So we have existing contracts that we do regular road and abatement, and then also as an emergency needs. So unfortunately, some residents won't let us in to do that. So we have a pest control contract that we go through, and there's even tags at each door, so the vendor scans the tag to make sure that we know they're going in many of the buildings. And when a tenant refuses, we unfortunately have not found it productive to,
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
Nathan?
Sure. Can you add I'm gonna skip ahead just a second here.
Yeah.
because I think this will speak to a lot of it. This is new for BMHA, it's in the report, faster unit turnover, higher occupancy will lead to increased dwelling revenues. There's a RFP released, and 2 party contractors responded to it, focused on Kenfield, Langfield. Going forward, after April 1st, one of the contractors continues at Kenfield.
I guess we have to ask our George Arthur question on all of this, as we remember our good friend who always asks this question, is it's not just the turnover, but it's the time in the turnover. That what we saw, regularly was that there were vacant, particularly at Kenfield and Langfield, that were there for months between people being able to leave and then have a new person come in. And given that we've got such long waiting lists, I guess, where are we on that and turnaround, and what, have you put anything in the RFP to make sure that these folks will turn it around in, a couple of days or something like that, as opposed to the long wait times we can see?
So these unit turns specifically have a 5-day turnaround per unit. Kenfield and Lakefield are some of our larger family developments. Family developments do take more beatings while people live there. You know, you've got kids, you've got, you know, all of that. So a lot of the unit turns involve things like new cabinetry, new flooring. So we do have the unit turns at 5 days per unit. We give them in batches of 5. So we're hopeful, you know, we try to get them 5 in 5 days. It doesn't always work out perfectly. It's been a little bit slower, but what we're getting are units that we believe will be, you know, livable for another 15, 20 years, that have been substantially brought up to a standard as opposed to just paint and clean. So there's different types of unit flips. Some units just need to be cleaned after the last tenant moved out. Many of the ones we're dealing with now have damaged flooring, damaged carpentry, new toilets are needed and all of that, so we're doing that type of work. So it's not the fastest unit turns, but we do believe they are the best investment for the authority.
So you're giving them out in batches of 5, or you wait?
1 to each set of contractors, I think
Oh, I
it's
got
batches
you,
of
okay,
5.
I'm good.
So we have 2 contractors, one gets 5, one gets 5.
I got you, I got you, thank you.
And you're gonna be above the 90% then occupancy rate then at these folks?
We're
soon?
trying, so I don't have my unit occupancy projection with me, but with the new plan moving forward, I believe 16 of our developments are supposed to be at 90 or 95 by the end of June. Some of them, like Schaefer Village, Commodore Perry Homes, Commodore Perry Towers, are involved in substantial modernization projects, so those are sort of not going to hit that threshold because of the repositioning for them.
I mean, in the past, and I guess we would ask you again, if you could give us the occupancy rates of all of your different areas. It was something that we used to ask every year. I guess maybe in the last year or so we haven't, but if you could do that, because it's one of the things that we've monitored for a long time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I will move along here. We can take a look at where staffing is. 25-26 adopted budget has 151 positions. This is the most up-to-date number. Actually, just about 2 weeks ago, there was 118 employees. The vacancy rate was high compared to the historical average. It's about just under 22%. The adopted budget, again, removes those 4 positions. And I have them laid out there. They're all within administrative, 2 executive, 1 finance, 1 capital improvement. And the specific titles are there too. And per usual, the MHA carries forward their staffing plan for 4 years of the financial plan. Okay. Looking at the individual budgets, first we'll go with AMP because it's the largest. The AMP budget's balanced. There's $1.4 million in net operating income and $400,000 in cash inflow. The AMP financial plan is balanced. Again, $7.3 million in cumulative net operating income, $3.3 million in cumulative cash inflow. And just as a note, the current fiscal year reserves projection for all AMPs combined is $3.6 million. Next is COCC, the Central Office Cost Center. Again, the 26-27 adopted budget is balanced. There's $700,000 of net operating income and also cash inflow. They're the same amount. The financial plan is also balanced with $1.7 million in cumulative net operating income and cash inflow. COCC reserves are projected to be $1.1 million at the end of the current fiscal year. And this is an updated number. Because COCC has been cash flowing, Marine Drive is now currently owed $3.2 million from Marine Drive. It was 2.8 a year ago. Move on to Marine Drive. The Marine Drive budget and financial, both are not balanced. The net operating loss of Marine Drive is budgeted at $500,000 with $700,000 of cash outflow. The financial plan as well is, of course, not balanced. $1.8 million in cumulative net operating loss and cumulative $2.6 million in cash outflow. There are no reserves for Marine Drive, hence the need to cash flow them from COCC. Did I skip section 8? Section 8 is pretty straightforward because it's cash in, cash out. budget, financial plan are both balanced. And it's showing net operating income, however, it self-balances, so any surplus is temporary in nature, based on timing. Good news is it has been going up pretty considerably every year, so just want to point out that the revenues are going up almost 20% from 25-26 to 26-27, and based on the federal appropriation, that seems pretty reasonable. That's good news. In summary, the financial plans are a mix of the four. 3 of the 4 are balanced. Marine Drive is not. So we'll focus on Marine Drive here. It's only able to borrow from COCC, as reserves from AMPs are not allowed by the federal government. So AMP reserves are not eligible for the state-owned building, Marine Drive building. Under the existing structure at Marine Drive, a 4-year deficit of 1.8 is projected with a net cash outflow of 2.6. We said it does not have cash balances or reserves to use. Now this is where it gets a little interesting, is that, well, I won't skip ahead, I'll go over here. Financial plan provides enough resources for Marine Drive to borrow cash through the end of the fiscal plan, financial plan, but would be insufficient beyond year 29-30. Unfavorable results, if they're less than budget, they're unfavorable as compared to the budget, would result in insufficient fiscal resources available to Marine Drive for the next 4 years. And then we know that the terms of the repayment to COCC have not been fully developed. If there's not enough from COCC for Marine Drive to borrow, an alternative form of revenue would need to be developed. Now I'll get onto this. Of course, Marine Drive is right behind us, here you can see a lot of the development going on. It's undergoing a comprehensive multi-phase redevelopment program. It's with anticipated completion in 2029. The new Marine Drive apartments will be owned and operated by an LLC distinct from BMHA, with revenues and expenses associated with that LLC. So it'll be a component within BMHA's audit, but it's different. It won't be we'll have the budget that'll wind down that we look at now, and then transfer it over to the LLC. The new entities.
Can I ask a question regarding that?
Sure. Sure.
What will happen to the rental amounts if it's being run by an LLC? They have the ability to raise rents?
So the LLC will be separate and distinct, and will have, being developed under low-income housing tax credits, the rents will be set at New York State averages. So that's gonna completely be a separate conversation.
Oh, okay.
The new entity's financial activity will be presented as I said, a component of BMHA. The legal structure should include the full repayment from COCC for the outstanding loans to Marine Drive. And then just finally, this financial plan is a little bit different from what we've seen in years past. There have been previous ones where numbers were held flat, utilities or employee benefits were held flat. This financial plan includes 2 or 3% inflationary increase. It's just a good assumption. And it's, yes, appropriately applied within the financial plan. It's something that this board has previously recommended to BMHA.
Thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Well, we appreciate you coming and talking to us, and we hope to see you in the future.
Good luck.
Thank you, thank you.
See, your first meeting wasn't that bad.
No, thank you.
It wasn't.
Thank you.
Okay, we've now completed our review of the City of Buffalo's budget and financial plan, along with that of the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency and the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority. We will now consider the draft resolution on our review of these items. A revised version with the changes marked has been provided to you this afternoon with your additional documentation, so it's not in the book. May I have a motion to approve this resolution, and then we can take amendments. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, opening for discussion. Your amendment, Tom, would be appropriate at this point,
Okay.
if you wanted to.
Wait,
Yes.
excuse me, can I have clarification? On the fourth whereas, doesn't it the language in that pretty much,
Which one you read it? Which one you
Yes.
start with?
oh, I'm
This
sorry.
one here.
I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, fourth whereas.
Okay, yeah.
Doesn't that pretty much reflect, Tom, what your concerns are?
As a whereas, yes.
Does it require an amendment? That's what I'm asking.
Well, where I would be recommending the amendment is under the
Resolve,
first resolve,
Oh,
okay?
that the 26-27 budget be modified no later than July 31st, 26. I would say, I would amend that to read resolve the 26-27 budget be modified immediately and submitted to the common council.
So you want to take out no later than July 31st, 2026, and put in the word immediately.
Immediately, which of course is hard to define, so.
Well, I mean,
no,
you can
no,
use
no, no,
immediately.
No later than the, council deadline to act on the budget, but
Then they need a date. What
Yeah.
date would that be?
it actually,
What is?
They need to act by May 26th,
No later than,
so I think maybe
so,
the.
so I would not
Friday
use that
beforehand.
date though, I would want
Right.
like 2 weeks before for them to be able to act on it. So, what is the date, the 26th?
yeah. So what date do you want to put in?
Oh, then,
May 12th is 2 weeks.
and today's the 5th, so that gives them a week, yeah.
May 12th, 2026?
That's my understanding.
Okay, is there a second?
So are we still on question?
We're on the amendment,
I mean, are we on the question of the amendment, or we're?
on the question of the amendment. So is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
So do we have to get a second before we have on the question, or?
Right, so
Okay.
now we can discuss
Okay.
the May 12th date.
So in all transparency, I have a 4 o'clock at the meet with, union leadership for the state. Is there anything that guys wanna add as far as?
I'll be voting no on this, frankly, we simply need more time, and I would say, things with the council, like I said earlier, are incredibly delicate right now, and in order to preserve the core budget presentation we have here, and the seriousness of, particularly on our revenue increases, we just ask for more time. We can deal with this via a separate budget modification resolution in July, but we need to get through this budget process right now.
Okay. And why do you need more time, other than that it's sensitive, and wouldn't you want to be fully transparent with the council?
No, we'll happily talk about this, while we work on a plan to deal with it, after the budget gets done. And there's a few options available to us, including the one I spoke about with Nadine on the securitization of brownfield credits, but I need more research on that, so just look for a little more time.
So,
So we're happy to address this, both on the, an accounting front, and, ultimately also talking to the city's outside auditors, Josh Malaki, who Jessica's been talking to. But I think there's some outstanding questions, as well as I think we have there's some outstanding accounting questions. And then we have a few different mechanisms to play with here, if it's gonna come down to either finding savings or additional revenue. And I just wanna give us a little time to research all those thoroughly, while we try and get through the broad strokes of this critical budget.
Jeanette, page 47 of the book that was handed out today says the finding is that the proposed budget is unbalanced by $5.5 million. It includes a restricted revenue in this amount. Budget is to be modified. Would you still agree with that statement?
I do.
So, in all due respect, to give you more time does not give the council the time they would need to act on the budget, since they have a deadline prior to that. So all I'm asking is that they be notified, included, and that an amendment be submitted to them so they can deliberate on the budget within the time frame. Giving you that extra time restricts and prohibits them from taking any action that they might otherwise take if this was transparent and they fully
Tom,
we're fully aware of the issues.
does this do that though?
Right, this is a revenue item, so they can't really touch revenue, we would just be simply supplementing it with another revenue item. So,
Well, what revenue item would you,
well, our prior collections is, as Deputy Mayor Swankamp mentioned, with the brownfield credits or the prior collections is really conservative and how much we think we can collect, so that would be an option. It would not be on the expense side, there would be a revenue switch, so that wouldn't affect their piece, where they can only touch expenses.
and the prior year on collection is one of the items that's been questioned by staff as far as whether or not the amount that you submitted would be met. And it seems somewhat suspect that you're willing to change that number by over 50%. Well, it's currently 10 million, so you'd go up to 15 million 2 weeks later because you believe, you have information to believe that revenue is going to increase by 5.5 million, or because you have to replace this revenue,
Well, it's actually 16.2 million in the budget.
if
for
you
the-
count the non-property tax things, right?
Correct. So it was a conservative estimate. We didn't put in the DPW land, or the land reimbursement as a method to budget balance the budget. It was put in there as a legitimate revenue. So it was not some kind of trick. It was, we put that in, and then we put in the collections, so we put in all the numbers we needed to balance the budget in the revenue amounts we believed. The collections were definitely a conservative estimate.
I'm sorry, which number are you talking about now, the 5.5 or the?
The collections were a conservative estimate.
Okay. So you're saying, now you're saying that you underestimated the uncollected, or the collection of prior years in your original submission?
I'm saying it was
I
conservative.
think that's the conversation that has happened, right? And so
Yeah.
there were a bunch of times we talked about, and they said, hey, this has been a conservative, number that they've used across the board. So
But our staff is telling us that it's one of the
It's a
things
question.
that they want
It-
to plan.
But it's a question, it's an accounting,
hasn't
it's an
happened.
accounting question more than it is a revenue question.
What's an accounting?
Well, the prior year collections is untested. So
Right.
that's the difference between that and, getting a list of what is outstanding and what's reasonably collectible. It's untested, so we conservatively added it to our schedule and said, okay, let's just cut that in half. And if you only reach half of it, what's your gap closing plan for it? We're not questioning the whole collectibility of it.
Would you
It's
question
untested.
it if they wanted to increase the 16 up to 21?
Not more than I am questioning the 16.2. No, I wouldn't. I would have more conversation to
Well,
understand the
okay.
5.5 collectability, but I think we would,
Yeah,
we would.
Well, we're happy to have the discussion,
Yeah.
100%.
All I'm asking is to notify the council
Understood.
that there's a $5.5 million revenue that you don't think will be realized.
But that's
That could-
different than saying that you have to modify the budget.
No, well, no.
You
that
don't,
would-
I
that
mean,
would be
you
a
can
budget
notify
modification.
them that this is an issue without telling them that they have to modify the budget.
No, I would say that they would have to modify the
Okay.
budget
I
to
wanna make
exclude that $5.5 million. It's up to them what they want to do in addition to that. They can replace it with another revenue, they can replace it with $5 million in appropriation cuts, or they can just submit it as a revenue modification, which would result in an increase in the tax levy. That, I'm not dictating.
Or sales tax adjustment.
Yeah, we heard today,
On the
sales
revenue
tax.
side.
Well.
Would you
they
be
could
more
put it
comfortable
into
modifying the
required
sales
reserves
tax?
and
All I'm
then
trying to make the
take
point
out-
is it's gonna be a revenue change, so
Yeah.
it's not really gonna affect their deliberations in,
But it would be more transparent to tell them
there are ways to be
what you think,
transparent without amending
what the
budget before
revenues
the
would.
deadline.
I'm sorry?
There's ways to be transparent without amending the budget before the deadline for really no reason, because it's not gonna change, all it's gonna change is some revenue line. It's gonna get redistributed.
Then redistribute it if that's what you think is the best way to do it. I mean, if you have something that you know is not going to be realized, then you should modify that. If you think it can be redistributed in other areas, then you have that option to submit that as revised revenue estimates. So you'd submit a revision to not only decrease that by 5, but you may wanna increase other revenues, or you may wanna cut appropriations. That's up to you. Or you can do neither and just do the one modification. But I think it's only fair to the council to have the most up-to-date, accurate numbers of what you estimate will come in.
But
That's
it's
all.
not what's coming in. That's, I think, the point. The point is that it has to go back to restricted reserves.
Well, an
I mean,
estimated revenue that can.
No, I understand, but I mean, there's a
You need to
difference
balance the
between
budget.
going back to restricted reserves. Presumably, they could take it out the same day out of the rainy day fund and put it back into the operating budget, right? I'm not suggesting you do that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, I just wanna make sure we're all clear. So, okay.
So it would say that the budget be modified only to reduce the estimated revenue and the expected replenishment of restricted fund balance for capital outlay.
Right, and all you've
Okay.
done is change the date from July 31st to May 12th.
Yes.
That's what we have as
Yes.
the amendment
Yes.
at this point. Okay.
What other amendments they wanna submit with that is, it's up to them.
Sure. Okay, I don't know, is Tim?
I'm behind you.
Oh, you're behind me? Thank you.
I'm double duty.
I just wanna make sure you could vote. Is there any more discussion on this? Any more discussion?
So with Tom's suggestion, is that something that the city sees as it's something that you don't see as a viable option?
It presents a timing challenge for us.
The timing and being able to do it, or because, I think you said sensitive to the council, or it's a sensitive issue?
I think negotiations are very intense right now, and we're just trying to not add additional challenges to discussion. We're taking this very seriously, we're happy to work on this, 100%, but, yeah, I really, I can't say too much.
Can you also present at the same time the modification?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think what you're asking for, I think we have July 31st deadlines for an array of the items you're requesting here,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think as you mentioned earlier, the
Yeah.
council's not going to be aware of it, that there's a questionable budgeted revenue, and that
But it's
one
also,
option is to amend it now. Yeah.
but it's also about what role that we as the BFSA has to weigh in on. It's also our responsibility, or at least not avoid, I mean, it's been brought to our attention.
Right.
I mean, contrary to whatever negotiations are happening, that we're not present at between the council and the mayor's office, I mean, we have a responsibility ourselves to at least put on the record what we feel as though is I'll say unbalanced budget.
Right.
But
But that does that, whether it's July or May, we've done that.
On the question, being in an advisory role, if we pass this resolution, and Rich, I guess this would be for you.
Yep.
What would be the consequence of the administration ignoring it, even if this is passed?
They don't have to, right?
I don't know if there's any consequence. I'm not sure that there's any consequence.
So. It's a
So
sensitive
we could
item.
approve a resolution saying that we think that's what should be done.
Right.
What they do
Is what they
What
do.
is whether they follow our advice or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the amendment?
So I'm sorry,
Sorry.
I apologize.
No problem.
And so it's just not informing common council, it's showing that the budget is not balanced.
No, it's
No.
saying that you have to modify the budget.
No, I'm saying the purpose of it,
Okay.
right? The intent behind it is to make sure, because you said it a few times, that common council doesn't have the opportunity to deliberate on, with all the facts essentially, right?
If the well, I guess I'd start with, they would have options of submitting this amendment alone, period. If so, that would then give the common council a budget that has $5.5 million less revenue recommended by the mayor than they currently have. If the council does nothing to the budget, the property tax levy becomes a balancer, and the property tax goes up by $5.5 million. That's about 3% more. They can also submit this $5.5 million reduced revenue amendment, along with another amendment that increases other revenues, trusting that that would be revenues that they felt confident would indeed be realized, not fake numbers as previous budgets have been criticized for. Or they could submit this amendment that reduces the revenues by $5.5 million, along with a recommendation of $5 million of appropriation cuts, which would keep the property tax levy as is. With that one option of just submitting this and lowering the revenues, the council could then say, okay, we can't touch the revenue estimate, but that means the property tax levy will go up. Or, we don't want the property tax levy to go up anymore, we'll make $5 million in cuts. They should have that prerogative. They may not want to make $5.5 million in cuts, but they should have that prerogative. They should have the true revenues that they can utilize known to them before they adopt a budget. That's all I'm saying.
And providing them with the information doesn't give them, without making an amendment or adjustment, providing with them with that information doesn't give them that opportunity to make that decision? Because it presents a budget.
They cannot change revenue
Because it
estimates.
presents a budget, a balanced budget, you say?
Right, and by charter, they can only make changes to appropriations. They can increase or decrease appropriations, but they can't adjust the mayor's revenue estimates. So we're asking in this resolution for the mayor to amend his revenue estimate so that the budget before them is balanced. And as I said, there's a couple, even if they submit this amendment, there's a couple of other ways to balance the budget. Appropriation cuts or alternative revenue increases.
And we're not in the control status, so the city doesn't necessarily have to take our recommendation.
Well, that means they don't have to do
Right.
it, but we can still recommend it.
And I think that, and as tough as it may seem, I think that's one of the conversations we had with Mayor Ryan coming in, is having these difficult kind of conversations, frankly, and making sure that the.
Yeah, everybody's trying to do their job
Right,
here.
yeah.
I'm sure they're doing their job as best they see fit, and I take on the same responsibility in this role.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All those against?
I would like to abstain.
Abstain. We don't have the 5 votes to pass it, the amendment fails. And we'll revert back to the July 31st deadline. On the main motion, is there any more discussion? No. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, 1.
2.
Abstentions? I think it passes, it's got 5 votes, yes. Okay, so 5 and 1 against.
Oh, no, I voted against it.
Oh, you are,
There
so
were
2
2
against it, so it fails.
So there's no resolution?
So there's no resolution at all.
Vote to reconsider, or make a motion to reconsider?
If you voted in the negative, you can move to reconsider.
Make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Because we still want all the other parts of it.
Yeah, we want the other part.
You voted it down, what am I supposed to say? All those in favor of the resolution, original resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Raise your hand so I know. It is unanimously passed, the resolution passes.
Great
Okay.
discussion, though. I mean,
Great, no, I think it's important,
I couldn't still
and
vote no there, I guess.
it doesn't mean,
You
it
guys
doesn't
did.
mean that we can't have this discussion with council.
Mhm.
I mean, for all that matters. So, we've now completed our review of the City Buffalo, plans, and the resolution. Is there any new business? Seeing none, this concludes the business portion of our meeting. I will now open the floor to anyone from the public who'd like to address the board on any matters discussed today. Is there anyone in the thing? Seeing no one here, that concludes the meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.